text him
guy and take away people's
I think he's. I was going to text him closer to 8.
She's a physician's assistant.
Just to call for that work.
I had someone at Walmart yesterday, like he was
hard
out and
because
about. Must have just hit him,
pretty
because I
easy
know
for somebody
sometimes, like, even the stomach bug that's going around, it just,
I mean, I've driven with him. He's not bad. Currently, he's not driving, but they're going to put a heart monitor on him here in a couple of weeks.
I did send a text.
And I told him, I said, get ready.
Were you able to have a budget meeting?
Back negative. I said,
Mini
Yeah,
meeting?
I think you can.
he's done.
up the hall.
Okay.
And that's what he said.
They're not voting on
Gets up in
anything.
the morning, hits a cigar,
Coming. 2 more people.
3 cigars for a ride through the day.
But I had the.
We'll leave by
Drive
here.
around for fun.
No, I brought him that one.
Go in anywhere.
All
He's in
right.
town and walked to Chambersburg. It's just part of his routine. And then happy hours, 5 or 6. Just by himself.
Smoking cigars. Doing happy hour. He's 88.
Yeah, he's
87.
getting ready to turn 88.
That's wow. That's some gene power right there.
I'm telling you,
How long is he out of commission?
he's not going to be able to drive for a couple of weeks. See what he ends up doing there. It all depends on the tests that he gets back.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Shippensburg Area School District Budget and Finance Update.
Good evening. Tonight we have the remaining areas that we have not already discussed to review tonight regarding the budget. So the first area that we're going to review is the food service department budget, which is separate from the general fund, to review the request for proposals that we have to submit, review meal participation by categories, and then talk about the budget. We're also going to look at maintenance, the regular budget, as well as the capital projects list, our building budgets, our curriculum budget, which also encompasses our SAVE program and ELL students, English language learners, our outside cyber charter school enrollments, our student services budget, which includes like special education, outside placements, alternative education, as well as our personnel request, and then some updated information regarding the 24-25 budget. So starting with our food service, I wanted to remind the board or new board members that every 5 years we're required by the state to rebid our food service management company. It doesn't matter if we're happy with their performance and satisfaction, it's just a requirement that we have to do this rebid process every 5 years. So unfortunately this is the 5th year that we will need to rebid, and so if you recall, you have already approved the request for proposals at our February 26, 2024 board meeting. After that, we've advertised the request for proposals in 2 newspapers of general circulation. The state requires us to have a pre-mandatory bid walkthrough for any interested bidders, and that occurred on March 5th. We had 3 companies attend, which included our current food service management company, Chartwells. The last date that the food service management could submit questions to me was March 8th, and then I had to provide them answers by March 12th. We will have the public bid opening on March 26th at 11:30. And then we will have a district committee evaluate the proposals March 26th through April 4th. We haven't set the date when the committee can meet yet to review that. And then we will be asking the board for approval of the vendor at our April 8th meeting. So we can certainly put this on the discussion agenda, but the name will remain blank for the March 25th meeting. And then we can put the name on for action at April 8th. Unfortunately, because of the state timelines, we don't have that 2-week window for the board to see the name of the recommended vendor if, and that's if we want to participate in the summer food service program. In order to do so, we must have the fully executed contract back to the state by May 15th. And when I spoke to them, I cannot get the final approval to them after April 9th. So,
And I would just jump in to say, board, that our buildings get used in the summer with summer programs for our kids, and providing lunches to them is an important part of those programs.
And then I also wanted to follow up that administration is very happy with our current food service management company.
So the goal is to meet that May 15th deadline then.
That is correct. So we can do the summer food service program.
Thanks.
So I know we've had some questions regarding where our free and reduced meals stand at this point. So I wanted to share with you, I picked a time before COVID so you could see what our free and reduced enrollment percentages look like, and then I pulled over our current statistics. So what I wanted to highlight on this slide is if you look at the district total percentage, you can see prior to COVID, back October 31st of 2019, overall our district was at a 41.3 free and reduced lunch enrollment. However, this number has grown, and so we are currently sitting at 55.3% as of the end of February 29th. I'm sure you're going to ask, the community eligibility provision program, I cannot evaluate that until April. We have to use April numbers to be able to determine that. And what you see in front of you here is based on our free and reduced lunch, both applications and direct certifications through the state. The CEP program, the Community Eligibility Provision Program, only allows us to look at our direct certifications. So again, I'm hoping here in April to be able to bring you that information to see if the CEP program is viable either across the district or for certain buildings. So that will be forthcoming. But you may wonder why I'm also presenting this is because with an increase in our free and reduced lunch rates, we are also seeing an increase in our breakfast and lunch participation, or the number of meals that we're serving to our students. We're also seeing an increase in our free breakfast participation because of the universal free breakfast that we are getting the reimbursement through the state. Because of this, we are definitely in need of additional staffing. And so you will see on tonight's board agenda, under the action agenda, we are asking to hire some of these staff this year. So we're asking to hire 2 cafeteria positions to help us with the increased breakfast meal. Our plan is, with that grant that we received, we'd like to set up grab-and-go stations throughout our another grab-and-go station outside the cafeteria at a different location in our middle school and high school, so we will need staff to be able to operate those grab-and-go stations.
Can I, you knew I was going to say something here, but just, so I don't have all the acronyms down. These CE.
Community Eligibility Provision Program.
So CEPP, and if we hit a certain percentage, then we can make the determination that it's fiscally possible for us to just decide that with some help from federal funding that we can provide lunch to all children in the district, or maybe some of the schools if they hit that threshold. Is that correct?
Somewhat correct.
Okay.
So we can't use federal funds if there is a gap where we where the program isn't generating 100% federal reimbursement, then we would have to subsidize with non-state and federal monies. So the general fund would have to subsidize the food service fund to cover if we don't have a strong enough direct cert. So
Okay.
when I go over it, we'll talk about what they call an ISP. I can't even remember what that is. An ISP rate. I think if your ISP rate is 62.5%, then you're right. You're 100% reimbursement of federal dollars. So that's a no-brainer. But if you're under that, that's where you have to determine, is it fiscally, can we afford to implement this program, because the general fund may have to subsidize the food service program.
Okay. And right now we're at 55%.
That's both free and reduced paper applications as well as direct certifications. When we look at the CEP program, they only let us look at the direct certifications. However, our direct certifications I know are up. So we try to encourage people to apply through the state. That's what the direct certification is, applying through the state, and then we get the information instead of just applying with a free and reduced lunch application that only comes to us at the district.
But that's what you'll tell us in April is where all where all those numbers are.
That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question. We have all the cafeteria spots that we are filled now that we have.
No, we have a couple that are positions that aren't filled yet, but I think we're close to being filled. Mrs. Smith, can you tell us how many open positions that are unfilled?
We have 1 4-hour at the high school, 1 3-hour at the high school. We just had a student cafeteria girl give her resignation last week, so that opened at 2.5. At the middle school, we have 1 3-hour position. We just lost someone at Nancy Grayson, so that job has been reposted. It's a 4-hour. And then we might be losing one at Jamesburg, but it's not confirmed yet.
Are you facing this every week?
I have a stack of applications about this thick that I'm going through and bringing them in this week for their interviews.
So you have people available?
We've been getting a lot of resumes in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
So, Dawn, just to be clear, I mean, the turnover is kind of normal. I mean, throughout the Chartwell system, is that something that is?
Usually our people stay, but what we find is the newer generation is not as good as our older staff. They're not committed. They don't have the work ethics that the older generations has.
And the other thing, which will lead into one of my other slides in here, is it's hard to fill those 2.5-hour positions. Those
Yeah,
3-hour
anything that's
positions.
under 4, I'm having troubles. Nobody wants to pay gas to come in for a 2.5, 3-hour position. So you'll see later on in the budget, like Christy said, I asked for a lot of those to go up to 4 hours.
But not just because of being hard to fill, it's because our participation has increased, and this is what I'll say, I can repeat it then.
Right.
And Dawn, the nutritional standards changed once again, and they have to do a lot of scratch cooking. They can't buy it pre-packaged food, so it's causing additional need for labor hours.
Correct. Our sodium decreased this school year. It will decrease again, and I think it said in the webinar I took today was the year 27-28 will go down another 10%. And they're also starting to look at sugar. They're going to start reducing the sugar too. So
Oh, they reduced it already?
we buy everything, my company does, with low sugar as it is, so it shouldn't affect us that much. But you do have some things out there that does have a regular sugar in it. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Okay, so the food service budget, I put together a projection, although I do not have in the proposals from the food service management company, since we have not selected one yet. That will help finalize this budget even more. But what I did to estimate for a budget for the food service, so you could see how the increased labor would impact our budget numbers, what I did is I took our 22-23 actual revenues and adjusted them. One, I adjusted the state for the additional labor because we will get additional subsidy from the state for the Social Security and retirement cost. And then last year and this year we received supply chain money from the federal government because of COVID. And so I don't see that continuing every year. So that is, I removed that from the federal revenues line item. So I came up with about 2.5 million for revenues for the 24-25 budget year. And then for the total expenditures in our 100s and 200s line items, our salary and benefits, you can see that went up, and that's because of the labor that we're asking, the additional labor we're going to ask for next fiscal year. And then because I don't have the food service management company budget, we don't have that person selected yet. What I did is for object codes 500, 600, 700, and 800, our other purchase services, supplies, property equipment, and dues and fees, I just went ahead and upped that by 5%. And so you can see that for the 22-23 fiscal year, we ended the year actually with $310,000 With the additional labor, I would say that we could end next fiscal year with about 52,000, so we're still in the black. And I just wanted to remind you that on tonight's agenda, just like every first board meeting of the month, you'll see a whole bunch of finance reports out there. And one of the finance reports is the cafeteria board report. So if you want to reference it, it's the February 24 cafeteria reports under tonight's consent agenda finance section. And as you can see from that report, the food service fund is sitting on historic amount of cash. So we're sitting on $1.26 million in cash in our food service fund, which is unheard of. Most times you find your food service fund is usually in the red or just meeting the black. And I wanted to point out that the food service budget is considered to be a nonprofit fund, so we should not be carrying too much of a high balance in that account. So with that cash, again, it will support those additional labor positions that we're asking for. And I have been working with Dawn to come up with a list of replacement and repairs of our aging equipment. So we are in need of replacing equipment in our food service cafeterias, so we can use that revenue or surplus for those aging equipment.
So the headline is food service is in a great spot. Remember that as we move through the rest of the budget.
So this is our food service personnel request list. It shows our current number of positions and the number of hours, and then in red it shows what we are asking for. So for Nancy Grayson, we're asking to add an assistant cook position at 5 hours a day. At our intermediate school, we're asking to upgrade our cashier helper, our one cashier helper position, to an assistant cook, but leaving those hours the same. Increasing the kitchen helper hours from 2.5 to 5. At our high school, we're asking to increase, won't read them all, some of our cashier helpers from 4.5 to 5, and then some of our other ones from 3.5 or 2.5 to 4. James Bird, we're asking for a whole new position as assistant cook at 5 hours a day. At G Blues, we're asking to increase the kitchen helper from 2.5 to 3.5. And I won't read all the middle schools. You can see in red that we're asking for a number of increased hours as well as 2 new positions. Moving on to our maintenance budget, which is part of the general fund budget. This is what we call our regular budget, so it's the reoccurring expenditures year over year. You can see there in front of you, the first column shows our current year budget, 23-24, at a total of $574,700. For 24-25, we're estimating an increase of about $92,000 due to an increase in our service contracts, projecting an 18% increase for those contracts, which is an additional $50,000. We're projecting an increase in our rental equipment expense and our garbage disposal for an additional $4,000 for those two. We're also seeing an increase in our general supply and our equipment supplies. The cost of labor, materials, and supplies continue to increase, so that's an additional $36,000, as well as diesel fuel. We're projecting a $2,000 increase. So that is the reason for the $92,000 increase. And of course, our maintenance budget is what keeps our buildings and grounds up and running. So anywhere from vehicle maintenance to our building and grounds, anything that has to do with that is covered out of our maintenance budget. We also then put together a capital maintenance budget for you. What you see on the screen is what we are projecting for 24-25. However, attached to the agenda, you can find a detailed listing for the next 5 years. Over off to the right-hand side, I have listed just the dollar amounts of what we're projecting for the next 4 years. And then again, you can see the details on the budget attached to the agenda. So for the 24-25 fiscal year, we're asking for an autonomous scrubber at our high school at $77,000 to come out of our capital maintenance fund balance, as well as replacing the B-Gym hardwood floor with composite flooring at $70,000, to repoint brick at our middle school at $20,000, to replace hot water heaters at our middle school at $50,000. Our Jamesburg roof is in need of repair at about $1.2 million, and I have that coming out of our future capital project / debt repay fund balance line item, as there's not enough in our capital maintenance fund balance line item to cover all these, as well as repoint brick at our Nancy Grayson Elementary School for $20,000, to resurface the walking track at Nancy Grayson for $20,000. We have installing the security bollards and planters at $30,000 to come out of the district safety fund balance, and to replace water heaters at our intermediate school at $100,000. So you can see we're requesting $357,000 of that to come from the capital maintenance fund balance, $1.2 million to come out of future capital projects, and $30,000 to come out of the district safety fund balance, for a total of about $1.6 million. Then down below, I pasted in what we are projecting our fund balances to be at the end of this fiscal year for those different categories. So you can see that we have $4.2 million in the future capital projects line item, well enough to cover the 1.2 for the Jamesburg roof. We have $1.5 million in our capital maintenance line item, which will cover the $357,000. Plus, if nothing major happens in between now and then, it would be enough to cover the 25-26 fiscal year request at $875,500 as well. And then our district safety fund balance sets at about $207,000, which would cover the $30,000. Next is our building budgets. We have asked our building principals to keep their budgets flat, to remain at their same allocation as 23-24. However, you will see that there's actually a reduction there. And what that reduction is we're just reallocating the funds to our student services budget. With the creation or reorganization of our special education department into what we call our student services department, they have now taken on overseeing some different areas in our school district, such as nursing and guidance. So we are pulling those budget monies out of the building budgets, so our student services department can oversee the spending of our nursing and guidance, except for guidance at our high school. We are leaving that at the high school.
I have a question. The building supplies, is that pencils, paper, and that kind of stuff we talk about? We talking about something else?
What was that?
When you say building supplies, are we talking about pencils, papers, and that kind of thing?
Under general supplies?
Yes.
Yep, like copier papers, pencils, scissors, yeah.
So you're telling me with this budget, the teachers and the principals won't need anything else? They won't need additional?
So a lot of the budget, Fred, is like each department gets a certain allotment of money for resources and other materials that they need, and the individual department heads will run that budget. So that pie is not necessarily, it's under the principal, but it really goes out to mostly the departments, to purchase things. For example, like the art department, they have things they have to buy every year. Science, with the chemistry lab, you have to replace things. So that's where that money comes from, to replace those things, and anything else, like if a teacher needs something, for their classroom.
I understand that. Several years ago, when I got on the board, they had a bus because teachers were concerned about not having supplies to pass out to the students. So I want to ask if this eliminates that problem.
It addresses, some of it. It's not that we supply every student with everything they need, but it allows a classroom teacher to have a set of, a pack of pencils if a student should need one. Parents do largely supply, things that their students need, like notebooks and folders and things like that.
Okay.
Moving on to reviewing the curriculum instruction and assessment budget. As you can see, we're asking for an increase in this budget of about $36,000. The increase, you'll see there is an increase in salary and wages as well as benefits, and that's to cover our the increases for the summer curriculum rating, the wages and related payroll taxes paid to teachers to come in and do that curriculum writing over the summer. We are also seeing an increase in our curriculum materials for the books, the periodicals, the educational software. So that's about the $21,000 increase you see there. And then we're also seeing an increase in our membership cost of about $3,600. And I also wanted to point out that as part of the curriculum budget, there is a need to purchase some large curriculum purchases for next year. So we want to buy the Science Steel Standards and the ELA Structured Literacy curriculum, and that's a total of $80,000. and we would like to make that request to pull that out of our curriculum fund balance. And currently, our curriculum fund balance is estimated at the end of this fiscal year to be $852,634. So plenty of funds in that curriculum balance to cover this purchase.
Just so the board knows, the state has changed the science standards. So we take the Keystones and PSSAs. They've redone those standards, in my opinion, have improved them. And so we need to realign our instructional materials to match that moving forward. And I think the structured literacy is around the science of reading, the letters training that our teachers have gone through to help support them and have materials that match the instructional practices that they've been learning and using in class.
So under our curriculum department falls the English as a second language or English language learners budget as well. And so we have a combination of expenses with our English language learners. Currently, we have 3 district employees, but we also need to use the IU services as we do not have enough internal staff to meet the needs of our English language learners. So you can see that we're providing 2 options for next year's budget. There's budget option 1 and budget option 2. Budget option 1 removes using the IU services and replacing them with 2 full-time teachers here in our district. If we don't do that, we definitely then need to contract with the IU. So that's option number 2. So you can see there, depending on the number of students, whether we need like a total of 2 through the IU or 1.5 or 2.5, that's the range there of the cost to go through the IU. However, as you can see that as I listed below, based on the information provided from the IU, their 2 teachers would cost us $288,000. If we hire internally, I am estimating our teacher cost to be $237,348. So the recommendation obviously is, because there's a cost savings to hire them internally, to hire 2 English language teachers here at the district instead of using the IU services. As you can see, our English language learners, students, have increased substantially. In 2019-20, we had 45 students. Currently, we have 237 students.
I have a question regarding the ESL teachers. Are these positions that could easily be staffed and retained versus contracting? Because when you contract, those positions are just, those services are there, versus if we had to hire internally, are those individuals like?
So they would be our employees.
Right. So are they easy to come by, I guess?
I would hesitate in today's day and age to say that any teachers are easy to come by. They're, I would say, probably on the spectrum a little more difficult to find, because it is a, it's a cert a lot of people get in addition to their like main cert. So they're out there, but I wouldn't say they're plentiful. And we will be lucky to get a nice pool of candidates.
So I just want to make sure I'm reading these numbers right. So we went from 45 English language learner students in 1920 to 237 in our current year.
That is correct.
And just understand, the active part is the one, obviously they're going to get more intensive, daily or alternate days instruction. The monitoring are the kids who have needs, but we do still need to keep paperwork on and keep them online and supported.
And it sounds like the argument we're making here is a similar argument that we've made with our special education services, where we try to bring as much in-house as we can so that we're not contracting and spending lots of money on outside resources. Is that?
That is correct. You get to a certain tipping point where it just makes sense to do that. If our numbers, I sit here and say, if our numbers continue to grow, it may be that we have to go back and contract additional services. We just can't. We want to match the staffing to our needs. And like I said, a lot of folks have additional certs along with this one. So should we see a decrease, we might be able to use that cert somewhere else. Should we see a decline, but we're not projecting a decline at this point.
No. And do we feel like the 2 positions meet our needs? Or is that going to be a stretch?
I think for this budget period, I think 2.
What we can do?
That's what we can reasonably do. I don't know that it's going to solve every problem we have. It's demanding, but I know our ELL teachers are working their tails off, and they've got big caseloads and a lot of kids needs to meet, and this will definitely help support them.
So we have some ELL teachers.
We do. We have 3.
Currently.
So we're almost doubling.
We are.
Contract out currently is at 1.5. So in total, between the IU and ours, we have 4.29.
So we are getting a little bit of a capacity upgrade.
Yeah.
The difficulty is we're just one of many districts in central Pennsylvania that is knocking on the IU's door for their services and support. So we can't always guarantee that they could even get us the support sometimes.
But if I understand Dr. Donat correctly, even though we have 1.29, we actually really needed more than that. But when we went to the IU during the year, they did not have anybody they could provide us.
So another reason to try to get our own people that we can depend on. Okay.
And the only challenge to this is, though, the IU is going to need to know by early April whether we're going to continue with their services or not. So this would have to be an early budget decision if the board would be willing to bring on these 2 staffing positions instead of contracting out.
You got the money?
Well, in the long term, it would save us money.
Huh?
Right?
Right, it's going to save you,
But it's going to cost something up front.
correct?
So, Fred, as we move through the budget process, to answer your question, certainly this budget is a challenge. I think I don't want to spoil thunder, from Christy, but I think spoiling a little bit, we're okay in the short term, to answer that question. Okay.
So it's gonna you're gonna come up before for a vote before she needs to, before April, by April.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the board should be aware that we are required to service these students. So it's not like a optional thing. There are mandates on what we have to provide.
So, I've talked to several of you about this, but I'm a strong believer in the importance of having a robust ESL system, but I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I would guess most of us don't really, other than to say like, hey, here's someone who doesn't speak English very well, and so we pull them out and give them a little extra training or whatever. I guess I wouldn't mind maybe in a future committee of the whole meeting or something like that, a little primer on what our ESL system looks like, and maybe if we're brave, what a sort of premier, 5-star ESL system might look like, because it seems to me that, it's pretty obvious that our ESL population is growing, and I don't think that is going to reverse anytime soon. And it seems to me that this is an opportunity. It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity to sort of create a robust, systemic, I don't want to say solution, a systemic, means of educating our ESL population, rather than, I hear from cynics that ESL is often this little kind of patch that we just put on. Like we hire some ESL people and you sort of put them in, and I'm sure we don't want it to be that. So again, I would like to sort of know what it looks like, and then know kind of what it could look like if it was sort of appropriately resourced.
Yeah, and I think I can answer a little bit of that now. There's been talks locally or within our consortium, that to answer your question, because these ELL learners come with a wide range of needs. Some speak very or no English and are able to read in any language, and others just need some support. There's a huge gambit. There were some discussions about the consortium coming together and creating a newcomers academy where those kids who are like really not proficient in English go for a semester and get like intensive beginner English skills for half a year, a marking period, and then come back and we get them to a certain level, and then support them back in the home districts. That conversation happened a couple years ago. I don't know that it's gotten off the ground because COVID hit and it's space and manpower. So to answer your question, there are better solutions out there. That would be one of them, and we can certainly have a committee of the whole. What does our system look like? To your point, I think all of us would like to support these kiddos, with more supports, because it's such a challenge for them.
Well, the consortium thing sounds interesting because, if we're seeing these numbers, I'm sure we're not the only district in the area that's seeing these numbers, and it seems like it's a growing priority for everyone, I would assume. And by pooling our resources, it seems like we might be a little more effective.
Yeah, I would be excited, given our numbers, to explore that. It's going to come down to space. Where would that classroom or classrooms be located?
You said that that conversation happened like a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. Like, I'm guessing this is a thing for you, is how do we get those conversations to really, really happen again? Because I think that's an opportunity to like seek something really great in the Franklin County area. If everyone else, which I'm assuming like Dr. Goetz says, is seeing some of these same challenges we are, like that's like big picture, like something we can celebrate and provide really good opportunities for young students.
Yeah, I'll be meeting with Franklin County superintendents next week. I can certainly bring that up.
That'd be great.
Like I said, it's the where is as much of a challenge as anything else.
Yeah.
And we would be designing a program from the ground up. So which is exciting in some ways.
That said, I mean, I think a long time ago, didn't Franklin County VOTEC start from the ground up as like nothing, and really great program that was created by a lot of people however many years ago. So I think this is kind of that same idea. It can be something that's really special to the area.
Agreed.
Superintendent, back in the day, there used to be summer school for kids. Could we not have those kind of training in the summer?
We do run summer school, Fred. It's usually credit recovery at the secondary level, but that's another way to build a program, would be to bring those guys in the summer to maybe do some crash course stuff. The only problem with the summer is the additional transportation. Like the transportation is often a barrier. Not that it can't be overcome, but that some of those, it's hard to get kids here in the summer without busing.
But it would take some of the pressure off the ESL teachers we have now if they got the basics, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks or something. And when they came to school, they would already have that running start, and they could get back off of that.
I can't promise that for this summer, but it's definitely worth exploring. It would have to be an extended program, I think. But it's worth talking about, Fred. I think it's a great idea.
It sounds like both Nathan and Fred's ideas, just to try to be as creative as we can, to sort of be proactive instead of reactive with. I mean, I get it that our numbers jumped really quickly, and so it's hard to be proactive when it's sort of unpredictable.
When the house is on fire.
Yeah. But as we've said, I don't think that this trend is going anywhere but up.
Right.
This is crazy pie in the sky stuff, but I think in Adams County they have a language immersion elementary school, and I wonder if that is another possible tool to help with this, and it also might relieve some of the pressure on our elementary schools, but it's probably super expensive and would cost a lot of.
Is it a consortium type thing, or is it individual?
Charter school. And so I I had a student who was on their board. I could reach out to her, but the way I think it works is they do about half their classes in Spanish, and it's not just for ELL students, it's for any student who wants to. So you basically have students coming out of this elementary school and they're bilingual. The ELL learners would obviously be better in English, and then your English speakers come out being bilingual with English and Spanish as well. So it's a bonus for everybody.
I just got a text from a knowledgeable person. Apparently, it's called Vita, and they're coming to Chambersburg. So
Okay.
we can say definitely,
I mean, I think we should look at every possible scenario to be creative about this. Thank you to whoever sent that text message.
yeah.
All right, so our last budget that falls under the curriculum office is our what we call our SAVE program, or we use the I Use Keola program, their online program. So this is what we call our internal cyber school, and trying to keep the folks in this program rather than going out to an outside cyber charter school. So you can see there, same way with everything else, we have more and more students participating. So in 22-23, we had 215 students. Currently, we have 325 students. So for 24-25, we're projecting an increase in our budget of about $201,000 to budgeting $472,650 for our SAVE program next year. As well as not only an increase in our students, we're also seeing an increased price from the vendor of about 15%. And down below, I won't read all of them, but you can see where the students are in that 325 number, like how many are fully remote, how many are hybrid, and the different programs that we use the Keola or SAVE program for. This is the back.
Sorry, I don't mean to derail this, but if this is a 30-second answer, do we have any data on why students choose cyber charter? I mean, in some ways, this helps our, space issues. So not necessarily complaining, but I'm just curious if we survey them in a manner that's like robust, so that we sort of know why they choose or don't choose cyber charter.
I mean, I think there's a myriad of answers. So we haven't done any reach out to this group, but that makes sense that we would maybe do that. I can tell you there's a variety of reasons why kids do it from the spectrum. A lot of it is credit recovery. We'll have students who come, to us and have not earned, a credit or very many. And so, you take a full course load, and then you can take Keola classes to kind of help get yourself up to speed. These are folks, and I'm taking a guess here, who are want to graduate as Greyhounds, and that's the advantage of this program, is that you are still connected to the school, and you have every privilege and opportunity that a regular student who's here every day in the building has. So I think that's the biggest draw. Without me having done the survey. I would say that. I would also say that there's a certain population here that can be successful in academically, but being in the school every day, for a variety of reasons doesn't work for them. So this is another avenue for them. Some kiddos who have attendance issues, where it's coming every day is a problem. They will sometimes enter our Keola program to stay on track. So,
Well, that last thing that you said is what I assumed, that, for some reason, normal school isn't working for them. So I was curious if we had a way of, I don't know, categorizing how school doesn't work. I mean, that might be useful.
yeah, this group for us is less of a problem than the next page. And these kiddos we can get to with a survey, because they have everything, they have their emails, they have, we have their information. It's the next group that's a little more challenging to get them to understand why they're an outside charters.
Thanks.
So this is probably one of the worst parts of the news tonight. So our outside cyber charter school enrollments have drastically increased this fiscal year. So we currently in the 23-24 budget, we have 2.7 million budgeted. However, based on the current enrollment of 236 kids, so we estimate an additional 5 in regular ed and an additional 5 students in special education next year. That, and as well as estimating the tuition rates for special ed and regular ed, that puts our budget at about $4.2 million, or an increase to our budget of over $1.5 million. So you can see that in 21-22, we were at a total of 175 students. In 22-23, we were at 179, and then for the current fiscal year, we're projecting at this point to end with about 236 students. And then again, you know, like I said, adding in an additional 10 for next fiscal year, as well as just increase or projecting the tuition rates. We won't know them until July when those rates are calculated. But what I wanted to share with the board is we really need some type of funding reform at the state level because of the amount that we have to pay in tuition. It's just not what I consider fair or reasonable. So you can see for our regular ed students for the current fiscal year, we pay a cyber charter school $12,364, and for our special ed child, we pay $27,154. So what I did is I took our current year budget and I pulled out our regular education cost, and then I took our special education cost and pulled them out, and everything else that you can't determine whether it's regular ed or special ed. So for example, like myself, like the superintendent, like those different budget line items, then I prorated based on enrollment. And so, and of course like debt service. So I come up with what it cost Shippensburg to educate these students. So for a regular education student, it cost us about $17,343 a student, or for our special education, $18,758. So you can see cyber charter schools are getting way more for their special education students, and they don't have brick and mortar buildings. I also wanted to point out a number that Mrs. Negley in our business office has advocated to our legislatures when she has had the opportunity, of how fair is this when PDE sets our tuition rate for SASD. So we have an elementary tuition rate and a secondary, and I just averaged them together to come up with $10,322. So what that means is if the board would approve a tuition student coming to our district and the family is here for a full year, they would pay the district $10,322 for that student to attend our district. So why are we paying a cyber charter school even more than that when our students leave, when PDE sets a rate for us, for parents to pay in to be a tuition student? So
And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but this line item, if the legislature would just act reasonably to reform, would have a tremendous effect on our current year budget. And I know there's talks for that, but there's been talks for a while. You know, upwards of well, I think you'll talk about that, right? The potential savings for the legislation.
no, I just have it lumped in as
Okay.
like the six.
There was just something on the news, a charter school owner or director was concerned because if the legislature changes the law, they'll go out of business.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them.
So sad.
So definitely, I would say maybe take that with a grain of salt,
I don't think they're going to lose everything, but they may lose a
right?
So, you were hinting at this earlier. I think the governor in his budget address proposed an $8,000 cap for cyber charter.
For regular ed, but they still have not really said there's going to be still a calculation for the special education students.
So, but $8,000 would be almost $5,000 less than what we're paying.
Correct.
Do you have a sense of what our overall savings would be if this was passed?
So I don't know when
At that
PDE
$8,000 level?
calculated that, if they took into account like our current enrollment or previous enrollment. Let me go back here because I have that. Okay, so if you've flipped to slide 15, you will see down below I show what the governor's proposal in the budget is if we get 30%, 60%, or 100%. And so, they're talking about giving us additional money in basic education funding, additional money in special education funding, and then that cyber charter school reform of 8,000 per student. This is what PDE had showed. If we would get 100% of that, if that would roll out, it would be a savings of 480,000. What I'll have to go back and look and see if I can find what they base that number on. Because if it's based on a lower enrollment, say like our 22-23 enrollment, then it would be a bigger savings than the 480,000.
So, well, it would save us a lot of money if the legislature would do something
Correct.
now and into the future.
Yes.
Correct. How do these special ed numbers at our cyber charter schools as a percentage compare to our brick and mortar buildings? In other words, what percentage of students that are in cyber charter get a special ed designation versus in our brick and mortar schools?
We'll have to calculate that and get that back to you guys.
I can't say either that there is a financial obvious incentive to get students IEPs there, and so there's a couple things. One is a student who receives speech services, we get a bill for $28,000. If a student has even more intensive, it's the same number. That's part of the problem. Is because speech services don't cost $28,000 to perform. So like this is basically just a redirection that the state government could do to get money back to public schools without raising anyone's taxes.
Right. And it's I'll just say the snarky thing. I think if I understand correctly, it is the practice of these cyber charters, as soon as they get a student, to find any reason to have an IEP for them so that they can bill at this $28,000 rate instead of the $12,000 rate.
So I can't speak
You don't
to that.
have to verify that.
But I think
That's
when I
what
look
I've
at those
heard.
numbers, and if I was working in charter school, I think that
Right.
would be a very I'd be very interested in making sure.
These are for-profit corporations, so they're
Correct.
going to do whatever they can to get as much money out of our districts as possible.
I would not disagree, Dr. Lyman.
One question, if maybe you can give me some background. The current formula that is used by the state to determine this isn't for cyber charter, isn't that really old and outdated? 'Cause this battle's been going on forever, but it's never changed, right?
That is correct.
Correct.
Well, it's
Antiquated. Go ahead.
It's based on the assumption that it costs the same to educate a kid when you have to pay janitors and wax gym floors and all the stuff that's involved with having a brick and mortar school, where all you're providing to that kid is a computer and an internet connection,
Yeah.
which is definitely not $28,000.
Again, to anybody in the Shippensburg community, I've said it before, we keep seeing this building that's being built right down the road here, which raises, we see 4.2 million as an estimate. I would be willing to bet that's there will be some active recruiting in our community via just billboards going up about, hey, here's our new school, come here, and that raises our cost even more. So we're beholden to this formula that comes from the state legislatures, but this is a major thing that can help our kids and community. And also, in general, I'm just a huge proponent of being in person, in school, face to face, building relationships with teachers and kids. That's a big part of life and growing up. So whatever we can figure out, if we can try to get some young men and women back in our buildings, that'd be great. I don't know what the answer is to that, but
I think all districts are struggling with that for sure.
Yeah. So if you ever write to senators or representatives or governors, this is a good topic to write about.
So there are those things that we can control and those things we can't control. And I appreciate the reminder for advocacy, because absolutely, that's part of our job. But and I recognize what you said, Mr. August, that we don't really have access to these students to find out why they chose the cyber charter versus whatever. But I feel like if we knew something about why they choose our cyber charter, which is fine, options are great, right? But if we understood sort of why, what needs aren't being met, in this school, it might help us perhaps towards creating, an environment. Like, I don't know, these numbers aren't terrible, except that because of the state formula, right? If the state formula was fair, then the choice wouldn't matter so much, right? But as the numbers aren't fair, then we have to consider it, I don't know, competition, I guess. I mean, unfortunately. And so, anyway, knowing why students choose something else might help us to discourage, or to rather encourage students to stay.
Agreed.
And I know a while ago we made some concerted efforts to make sure we had tutors, and I think we still have tutors that are available, I think, in math and English language, in
So a couple different ways. If there's a cyber student, they're welcome, sometimes encouraged to come in if they're not doing well. That population is served, can be served during the day. And I believe we still run after school tutoring, homework help at the high school level.
So that's something that the cyber charters that we have to offer that the cyber charters don't, is that the student could come into our buildings and get some help and tutoring, in addition to all the, like, be on a sports team, be in the band, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Correct. And I would say that they probably have some formula where kids have to come into a central location to meet with a teacher. I can't speak to it.
Right. But these are our teachers.
Right.
You're still a Greyhound.
Correct.
Okay, so our last department budget to review this evening is student services. And for those of you who were on the board in the past, you would have seen that say special education services. But now that we have a student services department, it not only oversees the special ed, but they also help manage the regular education students that get placed out as well. So for the 23-24 budget year, you can see that in the yellow is our special education services, which is funded through our general fund, non-federal funds, as well as then we receive federal IDEA funds to help with those as well. So you can see there in the yellow what our special education services cost us, or it was projected to cost us for the current fiscal year, and then in the blue area is our regular education students for a total of a little over $4 million. So for the 24-25 budget year, we're projecting just a little over $4 million, or an increase of $36,748. Although that is a very low increase, which we haven't seen for many years, I will say though, we are needing to add additional special education staff to the district. So we will have an increase in our new personnel request. But I did want to point out that April of 2023, we had, well, let me just read real quickly. Back in 2020, we had 594 students with an IEP. In 2021, we had 638. In 2022, 713. In April of 2023, we had 743. And as of today, we have 793 students with IEPs. So our population of special education students continue to grow. And this budget not only covers students with IEPs, it covers students with 504s and gifted. And currently we have 154 students with 504s and 59 gifted students.
What's 504?
So it is a service contract. I would think of it as like a IEP light, in that the student doesn't qualify as having a disability but still needs supports that the district must provide through a meeting of assessing needs. So there's still things in there that we are once agreed upon that we have to deliver on for the students. Sometimes they're medical, if a student has diabetes or some other kind of condition, but some are academic, that help support a kid just a little bit more than a regular ed student.
So Leslie, can I ask you to jump ahead because I have my slides out of order. So next is our recommended list of new personnel requests. So the personnel request list was much bigger than this. The entire list is actually attached to the agenda if you would like to look at everything that was requested for this fiscal year. We met and we pared this down to what we believe are our needs for our new personnel request. I'm not going to sit here and read them all, but you can see, starting with the two ESL teachers we talked about, what those costs would be, in need of a third grade teacher, in need of some secretarial support staff, increases in our buildings, as well as an ABA teacher and 2 part-time classroom assistants, special education teacher, the need for additional maintenance and custodial staffing, and as well as additional business administrator support. That grand total list comes to just under 1.5 million of our new staffing request.
Just from the special education student services side, those positions are required based on our incoming population. So a lot of those are at the elementary level to service kids that are coming in. So we would we need those teachers for sure to meet the needs of the kids that are already in the system and are coming in. Our I think, and Lauren can speak to this, if she would need to. If you look at our caseloads across our special ed system, they are already kind of maxed out. So this is just a step in order to give us, to be able to take on the incoming numbers that we're seeing.
Superintendent, I know special ed needs to be taken care of. Is there a point where we can't support? Every time I look, we're hiring more special ed. Are we going to be always chasing this?
So I think, as our population rises, we have to kind of adjust to that number. I know it seems like we come back more and more asking for special ed, and I think that's a factor of we were probably and remain somewhat understaffed for the size of our population. So we run the risk of not fulfilling IEPs unless we have appropriate staff, which is another issue. Lauren, did you want to, since you came, maybe speak to this a little bit?
When you consider special ed, one of the things you have to consider is kind of a cost avoidance perspective. So as Dr. Lyman had said, one of our major initiatives was to bring back and support some of those students who have more complex needs. In doing so, you are restricted to how many kids each teacher can support. So for example, for a student with autism, one teacher can only support 8 supplemental students. So the reason I bring up cost avoidance is to place each one of those students out of the district ranges between about $55,000 to $70,000. So when you do some figures, not only is it the right thing to do because we think that we are doing a superior job, and the students have the right to be educated in their neighborhood school district, what is happening is we are also avoiding having to pay out of district costs for 8 students and hiring the 1 teacher and the classroom assistant. The reason that we continue to come back though and ask for additional staff is because those caseloads are so tight and so prohibitive that we are almost always operating at a full capacity. So one student that moves in does not allow for us to support. We have 22 incoming students right now that we already know of coming into kindergarten with exceptionalities. So we're projecting out on how do we support those students knowing that our current caseloads are already completely full. So we are continuing to grow in numbers, as you heard Ms. Lent say, and I think again I don't know that there's a point in which special education is going to stabilize out necessarily, but I think that as Mr. August said, once we continue to staff at a more appropriate level for the number of students that we're supporting, hopefully that should decrease. What we have seen a significant decrease in is the costs associated with those out of districts. So, having the $36,000 increase is substantially less than in the past. I don't know, I've only been here 3 years, but I would say, I don't know how long that cost benefit goes back, but I think almost every year the budget was seeing an increase of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what you see is when you staff appropriately, whenever you start to bring programs in and have them available in district, you don't have that huge increase in your budget because you're able to support the students as they move in and as the population grows.
Do you have the room for all this that you want?
For all of the projected positions that we are recommending for next year, we have identified rooms that they would be supported in, yes. Beyond that,
It's getting tight.
yeah.
But we knew that.
And kind of to Mr. Scott's point, we're legally obligated to educate whoever comes through our doors and provide them with whatever services are deemed necessary for them, no matter what those needs are.
Correct.
Right? So whatever you bring, we have to meet those needs. And that's the beauty of a public school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say something here real quick. Just looking at these latest enrollment numbers in the elementary levels, and only seeing one third grade teacher on here. According to board policy, we're supposed to be in the 20 to 24 student per classroom range. And to me, it looks like we keep hovering closer to this 25 plus range. I mean, I could easily find additional 3 or 4 positions that would probably be needed to get these numbers down to the low 20s or 20 range. I feel like that would give these teachers more one-on-one time with these students, and potentially, graduate some of these kids from their IEPs and get these kids back on a standard level.
Certainly, our enrollment numbers are big, and we're working internally to figure that out. We definitely, to my mind, based on the numbers I've seen and shared, we absolutely need a third grade teacher to be able to handle those numbers. A lot will be contingent upon how big our kindergarten class is and whether our 1, 2, and 3 grade levels are a bubble or a pattern. That's really kind of a driver of that. It's not an exact science when you do this. You're trying to balance, salary requirements with class sizes, and it's rarely able to do that with incredible accuracy. Particularly difficult when we're spread across 2 buildings and you have a certain, it's not an even number, between buildings. One building has 5, one has 6. That's problematic. And so you have to look at that internally to what makes sense.
Yeah, just make sure we have the space. We're planning to have the space and be able to afford the necessary teachers if there is an increase in student population. And then have we gotten any feedback from the predictive analytics yet, or where are we at?
We're getting trained I think this Friday. We're supposed to do it tomorrow. We're supposed to do it today, but their person got sick.
Who all's
Thank you.
training for that software?
Myself, Dr. Stevens, and Randy Bybee.
Okay, so that brings us to our updated budget summary. I'll try to fly through the rest of the presentation. Unfortunately, with the increase in the cyber charter school enrollments and the need for the new personnel, of course, it has increased what we project our deficit to be for next year. So currently, just running down, if we do not increase taxes at all and get no new state revenue, it's going to range from anywhere from 4.5 million to 7.5 million. If we get 30% of the governor's proposed budget, it takes the deficit to 3.7 million. If we raise taxes to the index or not raising taxes at all, a $6.7 million deficit. If we get 60% of the governor's budget and raise taxes to the index, our deficit is 2.9. If we don't raise taxes at all, it's 5.9. And then if we get 100% of the governor's proposed budget and raise taxes to the index, we're at a deficit of 1.7. If we don't raise taxes at all, we're at a 4.7. Keep in mind, for next fiscal year, we have still not borrowed 100% of the debt service, so we have that little bit of padding in there. I think that we can ride out next fiscal year with putting in 60% of the proposed governor's budget. However, I will say I was at the PASBO conference this past Thursday and Friday, and a representative from PDE was there, and they had recommended to the school districts to project flat state funding for 24-25. So again, back to cyber charter school and talking with our legislatures, we definitely need to talk to the legislatures to advocate for additional state funding, as we are in dire need for it here at Shippensburg. So some things to consider, factors and other costs outside of our control. Some of them have numbers to them, some of them don't. So like as we work through the budget, you can see our maintenance budget is going up. That's just a sheer cost of, just the economy and prices continuing to go up. Our ELL population is continuing to increase, as well as our cyber charter school, which leads to increased transportation costs with our increased student population. Again, increased special education. Student population increases the budget line item that's out of our control, needing to supplant those ESSER positions. We're always facing those unfunded mandates more and more. Our director of curriculum budget has gone up, again, not because we've wanted it to, but the costs have gone up. Our medical insurance, the largest increase that we're seeing since I've been here, a 17% increase, or $885,000, again, out of our control. Our Keola participation has gone up. Our utility costs are going up. The business administration budget that includes legal services, and our insurance, all those costs are projected to go up, as well as keep in mind, not something that I can put a dollar amount to, but this whole multi-county equalization, the formula is antiquated. Again, we need to be talking to legislatures, to change that formula, as it is harming us. I was talking to Tim Schramm at PASBO when I went to the conference, and we were talking a little bit about it. And again, year over year, we're seeing growth in our district, but because of this equalization rate, we're giving away our growth. Again, I'm not the expert to be able to explain it. It just is a detriment to our district, and we definitely need something done. So in total, the stuff that I could put cost to, you can see that's about $4.77 million that are out of our control. And then I put together a slide of some areas that we need to be able to function. So in order to function, we need additional staffing for our special education, for autistics, for our secretarial staff. We have a new assistant superintendent. She needs a budget to be able to have, to be able to go to conferences and dues and fees. The assistant business administrator with all the additional rules and requirements and reporting that's needed, as well as a third grade teacher. We are in need of custodial staff as our buildings grow. Our technology budget costs are going up, and the need for protecting ourselves against cybersecurity attacks and those type of things, as well as our athletic costs to continue to support our students in those programs, to be able to do things outside of the school day, as well as, again, like a maintenance technician. So again, all those things that we need to be able to function appropriately is costing us an additional $1.49 million.
Are these things you're going to be asking for, Superintendent?
I'm sorry for
These
anything.
things you're going to be asking for in the budget?
So currently, we'll continue to refine as we go and come back with a final. But this is like a step forward towards that end process, Fred, as we continue to hone.
But that's your ultimate goal.
That's the ultimate goal. Obviously, I've talked about it a lot. That backslide, that we're riding that white water of 1.2 that we were able to get it down of ESSER funds positions returning. That could easily fit on that slide as well, because they're required for us to be able to function.
So our next Budget and Finance Committee meeting is April 8th at 6 p.m. So we'll continue to refine the budget, and as we learn different things, hopefully better news, to be able to refine the budget and bring that back to you. And then is there any other board questions or comments?
No, thank you. All right, right, so we are going to roll into our committee of the whole meeting. We're going to open it up to Mrs. Susan Fink.
Good evening. Boy, I'm not liking having to follow that conversation. But it's probably really well placed in that the reason I'm here is to help, right? With regard to what we're facing as a school district. On November 13th, we were here and presented what my role was as an executive director. And it was really, at that point in time, to evaluate how the foundation operates and what needs to be put in place to successfully execute much larger fundraising projects. The goals that Philip Faig and Josh Deal and I put forward were to plan for success, what we needed to do that. We started a strategic planning process. We needed to evaluate and make recommendations to restructure the foundation and its committees to better support the school district. And we needed to keep current with how important it is to work with technology that supports effective and efficient communication and host a donor database, which is why we pulled in a new fundraising software, CRM. When we talked about that, we hadn't yet finished, but we came up with, in our strategic planning process, 5 board-supported strategic goals. And it was to better support the Shippensburg area school district in a very strategic manner, to be completely aligned with what your needs are versus how we'd been operating for the past 2 decades, which was it's the wrong word to say random, but with regard to fundraising for some of the needs that were absolutely there, whether it was a swimming platform, and they were absolutely needed. But now it was to move alongside the budget issues that the district faces and see how we could align to more strategically utilize the skill sets we have to help offset any of these budget gaps or shortfalls, deficits. So one of the ways that we needed to start to think about the foundation was to grow the presence of this organization across the entire community. Because I think I shared with you at that point in time, whether it was a principal of a school or a community member or a teacher, some people didn't know that there was an education foundation. Well, you're not going to raise a whole lot of money in your community if people don't know and have learned to support and or trust the people that are running your foundation that are there to help do just that. We needed to evaluate and build the infrastructure so that we had the ability to raise larger funds. We needed to build a stronger foundation board. And we needed to align with the strategic programs and the projects of the school district. And we also needed to come alongside of you and formalize that relationship to the school district through this board of directors. And then once we were clear of the scope and all the plans that are in place for all the things that are coming at us, then we could start to think about large-scale needs and how we would work to help offset some of those funding needs. So whether that was for lighting or additional buildings, we will ultimately build a campaign around, with private philanthropy, what the needs of the school district are once those plans are very clearly defined. I want to step in and just say I've been working with the School of Public Relations at Shippensburg University, and Dr. Carrie Sipes has been, I did a good enough sales job where 3 of her teams came alongside of us to continue on the conversation that I want to say, was it Dr. Starts with a B, quite a few years ago, superintendent had commissioned SU and Carrie's PR groups that were seniors to do a whole research component for Flagship Proud. Well, it was a 63-page document that the students came up with, and I've read it, and they did a really great job. It was edited, it was adapted, some of it was used. But one of the things that those kids at that time, when they talked about facility improvements at Flagship Proud then, and two of those things, I think we've talked about this already, did come to fruition, right? It was the rehabbing of the auditorium. It was the front entrance of the high school. And the one thing that was left off to the side was the larger facility projects that have been in discussion ongoing. This team at SU now is building on the work of Flagship Proud, because I'm not one to say, don't start from scratch. We have 3 inches of paperwork of over 20 years of conversation that needs to be present and then committed to memory, but then also moved forward for whatever the school district's going to do with regard to large-scale funding opportunities, whatever they may be. So that's what they're doing. It's a semester-long project. So to go back to say, to answer the question of how we were going to grow the presence of the organization across the entire community, I want to share with you some of the updates quickly about what I've been doing with regard to the work of the foundation. So we've started some new outreach initiatives. We'll be involved in kindergarten registration in the coming days so that we can share with families as soon as they arrive into the district that there is an education foundation and what it's here to do. There's no soliciting here going on. It's just a matter of here's who we are and here's what we're doing, and we invite you to get to know us better. I will be a part of the high school career day and talking to the kids, making a presentation for the work in nonprofits. Of course, I have a long history of that. And we'll be able to showcase the Greyhound Foundation during their career portion of that day. So I look forward. It's April 17th. We have been working with Kim, who's in the audience today, at the News Chronicle. And I've been sending monthly updates to the school building principals of steady stream of information with regard to foundation. I've been writing articles. I wrote the unconference article because I attended that day for the professional development of the teachers. We've sent out the golf event save the date for August 25th. And I will be the master of ceremonies for the scholarship awards evening coming up. And I've been sharing out information on the monies we received from the grants that we've put out there and received back with monetary rewards. Been talking about reinvigorating the Athletic Hall of Fame, which I'd like to have an intersection alongside with the foundation. Of course, that's so we have some support on the philanthropic side as we move and groove and make those connections again with people that have graduated from SHIP. The next order of business was to build a strong foundation board. So we have restructured the foundation. We broke down the committees as they were standing with arts, athletics, and education, created a governance committee, created a programs committee that houses now all of those that were in existence and then has room to grow. And then we have a development committee that will be meeting next week. Programs committee will be meeting 2 weeks from now, and the governance committee has already met so that we could put these new committees in order and start moving forward. When we talked about aligning with the strategic programs and projects of the school district, we have sat down with administrators and started talking about what you saw on Christy's slides with regard to mental health needs, Lauren with regard to special education needs, We have talked about student services. We've talked about hotspots for underserved kids and families in the school district, and are going to be funding the new hotspots for $20,000 so that you have that cost covered. That'll be money coming from the foundation. I think we've already started that process, giving a monthly amount to pay for those subscriptions and the hotspots themselves. We received the 6 small grants totaling $15,000. We asked for 30. We got 15 from the Partnership for Better Health to help enhance the PBIS programming that we rely so heavily on PTOs and teachers to fundraise for. And that is one of the unfunded mandates that I've learned so much about through Ms. Lentz. And we've recently sent in a pre-review of a $150,000 grant that we sent out last Friday to help put a dent into the ESSER funds that are going away.
That grant, just to be clear, is for high dosage tutoring.
Yeah.
Should we get that grant that's going to allow that particular practice, which I've read a lot of research on, or at least articles that show that it's been wildly successful, and
This is a highly competitive national grant. We do not know if we will get it. It needed to be innovative, and it needed to supplant ESSER funds. It needed to work predominantly with Tier 2, Tier 3 students. It needed to be for math or literacy for the grades 4th and 5th or 7th and 8th who are falling into the COVID gap and are falling so woefully behind. And so that's how we wrote the grant. And I called the university to work with the math department and the teacher education department, and I talked to Wilson College, and we have agreements now set up with them to put out invitations to their students that meet criteria and that can pass our agreements, background checks, to be high dosage tutors throughout the day in 30-minute increments for 3 hours at a time per tutor, at least 3 days a week. And, fingers crossed. I heard from them today. They have 100 applicants so far, which is, I feel pretty good about, in that I thought it might be a lot more, but she did tell me, because we did speak to the funder last Tuesday. So fingers crossed that we can set ourselves up for success. But what that will serve as well is a template for other large-scale funding opportunities. So that took 2 weeks, nonstop. Terry Mowry and Marcia Schmooze do not want to ever hear from me again on email, trust me, because what I put them through during their work days, when they didn't realize and anticipate the amount of work a nationally competitive grant would be, and from working on Saturdays to working after hours, we got it done. Would I have liked it to be even better? Sure, but this sets us up for potentially more strategic asks, and that work for this kind of environment is complete, and we can just build upon it as we grow. So what we wanted to formalize was also the relationship to the school district via the board, and Dr. Lyman and Mr. August and Ms. DeLong and I and the foundation, 2 of the foundation trustees on the executive committee sat down, and I will take part in your board outreach committee moving forward. And that's really just to support and align philanthropic interests with regard to keeping us all on the same page and potentially working together and not at cross purposes. And then what else do we have to talk about is, the golf event coming up with an increased $7,000 to $10,000 over what we did successfully last year. And, we're moving forward. Technology, we have our database in place. It is slow going because I am a party of one. So it's being handled in increments. And our website is waiting for me to revitalize it with the new structure of the committees, but you have just received the complete update of the work I've been doing since I last spoke to you on November 13th.
Any questions for Sue?
Thank you so much for being here and sharing.
No questions, not one?
Go ahead.
No, mine was just funny. You can say smart things.
Mine wasn't a question. Mine was just a clear, obvious thank you to you and the foundation as well. The commitment of the board from the foundation and Sue is like second to none. And I'm glad that that relationship has been able to like come together. I know when I first got on the school board, it really wasn't a ton of connection there, but there clearly is now. I'm excited that they're going to be joining like the outreach meetings, something that we talked about like 4 or 5 months ago. I'm glad that's coming to fruition. Because at the end, everyone is looking out for the whatever we can do for the best interest of the students and the community. And
Absolutely.
I think that's great. So thank
Thanks,
you.
Levi. Thanks. And I will say too, with regard to the foundation board, we have 2 new board members that we have invited in, and Jill Hubbard will be coming on as a trustee, or is on board as a trustee already, and Ben Feisel, who is a Shippensburg grad from I don't know what year, but he's with Capital Blue Cross in Harrisburg, and yay, Ben! I'm glad you're smiling. He's lovely. We have lovely new membership. So onward we go.
As I told you before, your enthusiasm makes me enthusiastic about
Wow.
the future.
We need all the help we can get, right,
I don't
Mr.
golf.
Scott?
I don't golf, but if I can help, I will.
We should come anyway. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Mrs. DeLong, you are next.
Yes, and I get to run my own slides here. Very exciting. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about, recently we applied for some PCCD grants, 3 of them. So I just thought I'd talk to you a little bit about what the applications had inside them.
Would you tell it, what's this? I think I know, but I don't know if everybody else knows. What's PCCD mean?
Yeah, so PCCD stands for the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. So on January 10th, the state of Pennsylvania released 3 possible grants for school districts in Pennsylvania. 2 are meritorious, and 1 is a competitive grant. So the state funded physical safety grants for all Pennsylvania schools. They dedicated $18.6 million towards these physical safety grants. And that's one of the meritorious grants. The other meritorious grant is a mental health grant, and the state put together $90 million to support those grants. And then they opened up 1 competitive health and safety grant, and they allotted $32 million of the budget to school districts who chose to apply for these grants. So the caveat for all of these grants, though, is that school districts must supplement what they are currently doing. You can't supplant anything that's already in your budget. So anything that you're asking for through these grants has to be a supplement to what you're already doing. It can't replace anything that you're currently doing or anything that is currently in your budget. So the first grant was the Meritorious Physical Safety Grant. We were allotted $40,000 based on our average daily membership. So the allotments for this physical safety grant ranged from $30,000 was the least amount to $45,000 was the most that was granted to school districts. So our $40,000 was pretty much right in the middle. And they required that schools needed to use this for this physical safety grant to fulfill a level 1 safety requirement. So PCCD has a matrix of different physical safety components for school districts, and then they have them leveled. Like a level 1 is a baseline criteria, level 2 is the next, obviously, and then they have a level 3. And so you can't move on to anything on level 2 until you've completed everything in level 1. So in 2020, Shippensburg Area School District completed a risk and vulnerability assessment, or an RVAT, and that was with the state police. And from that report, one of the things that was recommended was the addition of impact bollards at all entrances of school buildings. And as you know, we already have budgeted and have gotten started with the impact bollards for the intermediate school. So we received an estimate to get the impact bollards at the high school, middle school, James Byrd, and Nancy Grayson. And the $40,000 grant can cover the cost for the high school, the middle school, and Nancy Grayson to install impact bollards at the entrances to each one of those buildings. The meritorious mental health grant. So our district was allotted $144,642 based on our average daily membership. And again, those awards ranged from $70,000 as the least amount up into over $200,000 for other school districts. So we requested to use these funds to extend our contract with ESS, which is Effective School Solutions. We are currently contracted with ESS to provide comprehensive Tier 2 clinical mental health programming that serves up to 30 concurrent students with a team of 2 full-time clinicians at the high school, middle school, and intermediate school. So we currently have 1 clinician at the high school and then 1 clinician that splits her time between the middle school and the intermediate school. The contract also includes an assigned regional director, comprehensive quality and risk management support, and data analysis services, as well as they provide professional learning services to include up to 6 hours of professional learning for our district staff. So this year we had training for all of our district staff on trauma-informed approaches in the classroom, and also the nurtured heart approach, which is an extension of trauma-informed approaches. So the total cost of the contract to extend with ESS is $315,000. So obviously that's above what we have, but we were able to build the $144,642 towards the contract, and then the remaining $170,000 or so is going to be built into that competitive grant.
And just so the board's aware, the ESS is going to be conducting a needs assessment across our system when it comes to mental health. They're going to be doing that over the next 2 weeks, come back with some recommendations. It's a third-party look at what we're doing and what we may need and what holes may exist. So we're looking forward to that, and we're also looking to have them, once we have that in place, do an evening event with a specific topic of note that comes from that report at a kind of like a mental health information night as well. So that's something to look forward to in the coming weeks.
Do we currently have 2 full-time clinicians, or we
Yes.
will have?
We currently do. This is to extend the contract.
Are they booked?
Yes.
Okay. They're maxed out. Okay.
So that takes us on to the third grant that we applied for, which is the Competitive Health and Safety Grant. So each school district was allowed a maximum of $450,000. So Shippensburg Area School District did apply for the maximum amount of $450,000. And again, priority is awarded to districts who are looking to meet level 1 baseline criteria, either in physical safety or mental health and behavioral health. So this is what we asked for in our application. We asked for the rest of that ESS contract extension, which is $170,352. We requested upgrades and enhancements to exterior lighting at all buildings. Okay, so this is also another level 1 baseline requirement. And if you remember in our Site Logic, one of the menu items that was kind of below the line that we couldn't afford was $133,000 to upgrade the lighting, the exterior lighting at both the middle school and the high school. So we built that into this competitive grant, as well as we received some other estimates to enhance the exterior lighting at other buildings. So that's why it's $147,282. So we'll be, if we're awarded this grant, we'll be able to upgrade the exterior lighting at all buildings. Then, if you remember, in the physical safety grant, we did not have enough money of the 40,000 to do impact bollards at all buildings. So this is the remaining cost for the impact bollards at James Byrd at 7,500. And then finally, we have $124,828 left, and we are applying to upgrade and enhance the security camera system at the middle school. So as you know, we have added the new wing onto the middle school, which currently doesn't have any cameras at all. So it'll be adding cameras there and then replacing some old and outdated cameras and other equipment at the middle school. So that takes us to our $450,000 ask. So hopefully we will find out in April is when they're reviewing all the applications. They were due on February 29th. So they gave us 4 weeks to turn these grants around, but we got it done. And so then the grant award process will take place in April with a start date of May 1st.
I have a question.
Yes.
We got a grant last year, didn't we, for money?
Yeah, so PCD grant is really how the state pushes out a lot of monies.
How much money that left that we still have unused?
So we received a total of $350,000 or so last year. And so we have been spending that money with the ESS contract that we have this year that we're looking to extend. And then also we've been using some of that money on, again, some security cameras, and then also I believe some of the funding for the SRO came out of that grant as well.
Any other questions for Leslie?
Is so you mentioned, is it level 1? Am I using the right words here?
Yep.
Have we ticked the level 1 boxes yet, so we can move up to level 2? And what's at level 2?
Yes, so at the baseline, if we get the enhancements to the exterior lighting and the bollards, that would do all of the physical security baseline data. And then we have everything at the behavioral health baseline data, so we would be moving up to level 2 and level 3 for behavioral health.
Okay.
I have a copy of those if you want to see what they look like.
Sure. But so then this means that next year we could see more of this, but maybe not as boring. Not that it's boring, but it's something a little more enhanced.
Yes.
I have a bias here, so I'm most interested in the mental health side of things.
Of course.
Some additional mental health services as well.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to take care of these things before we can get to those.
Sorry, I called them boring.
That's all right. Just really quickly, just want to give Leslie a kudos. This was a quick turnaround, and when she says we, she must be using the royal we, because I think she did most of the lifting on this, and it was a tight window. So thank you and good job getting this in. My hope is that other districts don't have a Leslie, and we have very little competition, but we'll see.
So that concludes the committee of the whole. So we'll have a brief intermission before getting into the planning and action meeting.
It doesn't look like that.
Hello and welcome back. Calling the March 11th Planning and Action Meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard, Mr. Mike Carey, Mr. Levi Kressler,
Here.
Mr. Darren Donovan,
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Here.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Here.
Mr. Kurt Noggle,
Here.
Mrs. Steph Eberly,
Here.
Mr. Aryan Gaunkar, Miss Lily Kell.
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. This meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the Shippensburg Area School District. Mr. August, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are. Item 6A has been added, which is bumping all the other discussion items down. It's the grant approval for the grant that Mrs. Fink discussed, the Accelerate grant for high dosage tutoring.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Goetz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to the citizens' comments. I see there was one, Mr. Drew Alosi. Please identify yourself by name and address and indicate which agenda item you're speaking on. Address all comments to the board as a whole and make sure they are in the form of a statement. Questions will be taken under advisements. Responses to questions will be offered after due deliberation and will be provided by the superintendent at the direction of the board within a few days of the board meeting. You are allowed 3 minutes for your comments.
Thank you, Madam President. Honestly, I wanted to be thankful that I got here a little early because hearing the reports earlier from the Committee of the Whole, Budget and Finance, really does put a great display on the amount of work that's being done by everybody, from the administration to also the board. You guys have a lot vested in this school district. I'm here talking about, I think, 5K, which I guess revolves the financing of the stadium project. Going back to the other meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, when action was taken to go out for bid, it seemed laser focused on just a few parts of that, and to get an all-encompassing view of here's the entire project from start to all the phases, everything all together. This is what would need to be done to complete the entire thing. And breaking it down like that allows for the different parts of it to be kind of targeted by organizations to say, hey, listen, we can help pay for the lights, or we can help pay for the bathrooms. But with that not going out to bid and not really having an idea of exact cost for that, even going and looking at the property next door, potential water runoff, not knowing how much parking is needed, won't be able to allow us to understand how much water runoff will need to be accommodated. So it seems like it's all together, all the pieces are there, but to kind of put them together, create the entire picture, so then anybody that's interested in donating, I wish Ms. Fink was still here, then really be targeted for the specific parts to complete the entire project.
Mr. Olson, do you mind adjusting the mic a little bit? You're a little hard to hear.
Sorry.
No worries.
So if you didn't hear much of that, I apologize. I'd gladly talk to you on the phone. But
Thank you. Moving on to our student representatives, Ms. Kell.
Thank you. SATs were held on March 9th here at Sashis. Shippensburg's 2 Kappa is hosting an annual prom project collecting prom dresses, heels, flats, sandals, purses, hair accessories, and makeup. Sashis is open to donations. The PennDOT Careers Field Trip will be held on April 23rd. It'll be at the PennDOT Maintenance Facility in District 8 Harrisburg for students interested in infrastructure. The 193rd Special Operations Wing in Middletown, PA is offering a field trip to students interested in the Air Force on April 10th. The Focus on Career, Health and Wellness Career Field Trip will be on March 21st. Students interested in dentistry, therapy, fitness, human services, medical assistance, and nursing are invited. Math Honor Society is currently accepting donations and applications. That is the board report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Career Tech, we did not meet. Policy Committee.
Policy Committee met on March 5th. We basically essentially tabled the class size policy to get some further input from administration on that policy. But we also passed through and approved a bunch of policies, many of which are policies that have to be on the books but don't at this time really apply to our district because they deal with things like brick and mortar charter schools and things of that nature. We also looked at policies related to independent study, field trips, extracurricular activities, etc. And we gave Leslie a few jobs regarding funding for field trips, pay to play for sports, and other topics for the athletic committee to maybe look at.
Thank you. Mr. Kressler, Athletic Committee report.
Sure. The Athletic Committee met on Wednesday, March 6th at 4 p.m. In attendance was Mr. Donovan, Mr. Bard, Mr. August, Ms. Fanis, myself, and also 2 community members. We discussed the old business, just reviewing the final records for all the winter sports teams, discussed the status of the huddle camera that this board approved. It's ordered, but it has not yet arrived or been installed. The 24-25 athletic budget, and also reviewed the 24-25 athletic schedules. New business we talked about was spring sports starting. High school spring sports started last Monday, so they were, 3 days in by the time we met. And how many kids had signed up for each sport. We discussed the track and field team traveling to Chambersburg or Carlisle after, I think the date was April 22nd, due to some construction going on out here of the new multi-purpose stadium. It did look like senior night was going to be held in our track meet that's at James Buchanan. They seemed like they were willing, I believe, to allow us to host senior night there. So first of all, thanks to all the districts that are helping us out. We also discussed the Hall of Fame committee, which Ms. Fink mentioned earlier. The Hall of Fame committee at the high school is reorganized and is planning on having inductions this fall. There should be more information coming out once that committee, I guess, votes on who's going to be inducted. One thing that we also discussed was the $10 fee for sports physicals. It came as a recommendation from the athletic committee to waive that as well. I think that's on the agenda down here somewhere to talk about. I think that estimated cost was about $1,200, again, as you'll see later in the agenda. There's also a discussion about potential for stadium alternates, mainly around an enhanced scoreboard. So then during the board kind of open discussion at the end, the topic of the cost of the athletic stadium was brought up. Ironically enough, the same topic was discussed in the News Chronicle story the next day. The current cost for the multi-purpose stadium, which is board approved, was up to $5.6 million, including the soft cost. Additional items, lights, bathroom concessions, etc., were discussed. A discussion was held about the capital campaign ideas to raise funds for those items. Primarily lights seem to be the first goal. That price tag is around $1 million. Just to note to everybody, these discussions involving everything with the athletic stadium has gone on for a long time, but specifically the last almost 2.5 years since I've been on the board, we've had plenty of open dialogue and discussion, and information has been passed out. I think the board has been very transparent in all of those things over the last 2.5 years. Those topics have also gone into committee meetings, including facilities and athletics. So there's really, to me, no shock with anything that's going on, because this has been publicly talked about a ton amongst this group of 9 for a long time. So other than that, that was it.
Do we ask questions now, the committee, or later? Yeah, committee, can I have a question? Ask the committee question? Okay. The lights, and I guess for you too, Superintendent, if we get the money for the lights, what else do we have to do?
So the big question that,
Play
Fred,
football.
is to get approval from the borough to put those lights up, and ultimately approval around the parking requirements to play football at the stadium. So lights would be the bare minimum, along with porta potties that we would have to bring in.
Let's say we got money for porta potties. I'm not students giving no porta potty for concession stand, field house, and bathrooms. We were able to, Ms. Fink and the community came together and were able to get that amount of money and lights. What stop? And you say in the borough, we was
So I don't know about stopping. We have to get their, in order land development approval to put those things up, and there will, I believe, be parking counts that will need to be worked out. One requirement is we would have to do a traffic study down at the Memorial right now, in order to kind of inform what the parking requirements are for a varsity football game. So that is one. So to answer your question, Fred, we would need borough approval of whatever plan that we're putting in.
okay.
Okay. We would have to do a traffic study, and then obviously we would need the funds to be able to support those.
Why do I need a traffic study down Memorial Park?
So because they're trying to measure how many people actually attend varsity football games, and so the traffic study and the parking study was a requirement that they have.
Everybody comes to the games have to buy a ticket, correct? I wouldn't
Not necessarily, Fred. We have
other than band, football players.
So yeah, I mean, we have a decent count, but there are a number of like lifetime passes I've found. So there are some people that aren't counted in tickets. They have like a card they use, which is kind of unique to us. Anyway, that isn't really matter because that's the stipulation they put on the approval for a future stadium expansion.
But doesn't our lawyers and our advisor advise that that's not necessary? Don't they have a different interpretation what the borough does?
I don't know that we've engaged in that.
The gentleman stood there one day and said that he disagreed. He said that they want one thing, but another part of the ordinance says something different.
So there are. So I think it's almost a separate issue, Fred. There are counter ordinances that the borough has in regard to how big a parking lot can be, but also requirements for seating at events. So that's why we apply for variances from them. But through this process that we have in front of us that's about to go out to bid, that was part of the land development, was that a traffic study had to take place in order for us to play football there. We were going to put it in this project. It's $8,000. I was hoping to not spend that money now, considering we knew we weren't going to be playing football at this moment. But if it, when we get that next phase ready to go, we will have to do that traffic study. The traffic study I don't think is out of the ordinary, in order to see like how many cars and how much parking, and it may benefit us ultimately, as they do that traffic study.
I understand that. I just the timing, amount of time we wasted for 20 years getting the stadium here. Now we're at the finish line, and it's another stipulation. So if the borough is the only thing, if we got all the money for everything, donation doesn't cost anybody anything except donation. The borough is the only thing stopping us from doing this.
I would say it's borough approvals,
Same thing.
approval process, which we would go through with anything we had to do. I think as big a problem is the funds to be able to do it. I mean, I know that we have aspirations and we have some goals, but currently, we just sat through the budget process. We are going to need to have a concerted effort to raise those funds to be able to do that.
I believe the community's willing to do that, and people I've talked to. And
I think I think Mr. Losi talked about things kind of aligning and being right there. Clearly the foundation is set up, and Sue is working towards that. We have shovels in the ground hopefully very soon, and that momentum hopefully can propel us to where we want to be as a district. So and anybody that's building anything is going to go through a land development process.
I have no problem with the process, but my thing, if we got the money and we go through the process, why can't we play football?
There's
no reason.
Yeah, there's right. I mean, that's just the next phase.
Okay. Well, the phase part bothered me. What is the next phase?
Okay, so that would be, I think, a board decision. The minimal viable product, in my mind, to play football we'd need lights, which the last time we kind of did that is somewhere, we kind of costed it out was between $800,000 and $1 million. We would need some sort of porta potty contract, and we would again need that borough approval around the parking requirements.
But if I got donations from businesses in the community that are willing to, we got people build pole barns all over the place, willing to build a pole barn, and we have the money to pay them, and they bid for it, or whoever gets it. We couldn't bid that. I don't understand. I guess I don't understand.
So anytime we want to do anything to our land, we have to go through a land development process. So that's, as I've learned, is an intricate process. It's in depth. There's a lot of things that go on. Soil conservation, stormwater, parking requirements. All that takes a lot of time, Fred.
That's what I'm saying about getting started now. I mean, started with the second phase of the issue.
Once we get this phase done, I think as this phase is getting done, I mean, that's a conversation for the board to have, through facilities or athletic. I mean, I think the board just needs to come together and ask that question, what is the next step? I would just say we need to define it and put a number on it. We are going to have to spend some money to go through the land development process, and we are going to have to spend some money on design, to get there, because our project ends with what was on the table.
Yeah, what's on the table, but they didn't design the concession stand, they didn't design the field house, and they didn't die. So those are separate entities, and for me, I don't want Site Logic or K&W have anything to do with it. Those three projects, we paying them to do it when we got people in the community that have businesses are capable of doing it. So I have a problem paying them for something I can do myself, or we have a maintenance man out here, maintenance for that could do it.
So anything we add to our land, building wise, we're going to have to go through the same.
I have no problem. I'm just frustrated with the things we got to do, put off. Last year I was told, and what you thought too, I'm not blaming you because you thought the same thing, that we'd be able to play at least the start of football this year in the stadium. And now I'm told we can't even put track in there until later on because we're getting stiffed down. Just tired of keep pushing it down the track. I'm not blaming you because I know you tried. But I'm the borough, and I live in the borough. I pay recreation tax in the borough, so I don't care what people say. I got a right to say what I want to say, and being on this board, I want to say what I want to say. This is ridiculous, and I just want to be in a position that if we get the money, that we can start the football stadium.
So. Again, Fred, there's a think of how long it took us to get here. I would anticipate a similar process for the next phase, whatever it is. We are going to have to define it though. Okay, and as soon as we're ready to do that, we can start that process.
Okay. Now I have another question to the athletic committee and superintendent. Will we bring back the Christmas tournament, the basketball tournament? You told me last year that the athletic director was unable to find teams. I officiated Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all kind of tournaments. The community wants the tournament. It's 50 years and all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. Are we going to do what is necessary to bring it back?
So Sarah has talked to both coaches. They are extremely, I don't want to use the word extremely, they are satisfied with the tournaments they're playing currently. Based on the other people in them, it has to, I guess, go for towards playoffs and power ratings and all those things. So she's been in those conversations to ask, do our programs want to leave those the tournaments that they're in to potentially do a holiday tournament here, The problem, Fred, is like we can't guarantee that. So we would have to pull out of those tournaments, and we don't know that we would have folks or other teams come and play in ours.
We have a boys tournament?
So that was a part of, Bill touched on it, that was a part of it was apparently, when I said we talked about the 24-25 athletic schedules, that was a part of that conversation. As Mr. August said, Sarah talked to coaches, and coaches were happy with like the current tip-off tournament, going away to that rather than, knowing they have 2 games rather than trying to have having the holiday tournament here. Myself personally, I was disappointed in that because I would much rather see a home tournament. But that was the decision that the coaches, it sounded like that was what.
So we've had those conversations, Fred. We would be upending our programs and going against what the coaches apparently want.
But the coaches coach a team, I have no problem with that. But it's community. What are we doing for the community? Community was coming for 50 years coming, and we had a big turnout, and kids and families turned out for that. And all of a sudden we're saying it's the coaches don't want it. They don't want to do nothing. That's why they're not doing it. It's not that hard. I've talked to athletic directors of other schools. They get teams to do they're willing to come to tournaments. I would like to have the Christmas tournament back in Shippensburg for the community. That's my opinion. So that's all for right now.
Well, Mr. Kessler, I just want to say thank you for the athletic committee update. So I'd just like to take this opportunity, as it seems most appropriate, to address another matter that directly ties in with your update. As many of you are aware, the News Chronicle published an article on March 7th regarding a community member who is opposed to the district building a stadium on campus. With any publication, it's important to ensure the validity of the facts presented. Mr. August and myself, board president, was never contacted prior to the publication regarding the multi-purpose stadium. If we had been contacted, we could have responded with the appropriate facts. With that being said, I feel it necessary to address the misrepresented points in the article. Shippensburg School District does not have a football stadium. We lease Veterans Stadium and pay approximately $45,000 when we add in supplies and the cost for maintaining it. Veterans Stadium is a football complex with a baseball field that we do not use. Veterans Stadium at Memorial Park has a long history in Shippensburg, having been built in honor of all Shippensburg veterans for service to their country. Yes, this is true. However, when something is built to honor, it is usually maintained and cared for. This has not been the case, and Memorial Park has become dilapidated, that many of the amenities are unable to be inhabited, along with many deficiencies which bring many challenges to play at the park. These challenges result in additional district spending. For example, the district paid $5,000 for tents for teams to have a place to gather at halftime to stay out of the elements. The cost of the multi-purpose stadium on district property has always been presented as a phased project. The first phase of the project was to redo the track and install a turf field. While the price tag for a Taj Mahal multi-purpose stadium could cost $10 million, that is not the intent of Shippensburg School District. Through the phased project, we will be able to apply for grants, accept monetary donations from community partners, and allow naming rights with the assistance of our dedicated executive director. A lot of the costs associated with the extensive permitting is in part due to the nature of the borough ordinances, which resulted in Shippensburg School District applying for variances. Shippensburg School District never referred to the athletic upgrades at the high school as a football stadium. It has been referred to as a multi-purpose stadium. Almost all of our outdoor athletic programs will have access to the new multi-purpose stadium. Our track was to be replaced almost 10 years ago and never was. Last year, the track was deemed unsafe, which resulted in no home meets and additional costs for transportation and hosting home meets at visitor locations. Other Shippensburg School District athletic programs have had a disadvantage due to not having turf and then being expected to compete on turf. You practice the way you play. This was never about just football. This project was to upgrade our student athletic facilities, which was long overdue. The needs are great and the resources are limited. The district is trying its best to address all the needs. We just completed the middle school project and hired more teachers for those classrooms. Shippensburg Area School District is dedicated to excellence in education. It's important to note that athletics complements education through student engagement. When a student is engaged, they do better academically, and we are committed to that. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'd like to just go over our enrollment. Total district enrollment is 3,682. So we've kind of backed off the 3,700 plateau that we were edging towards. Individual buildings, our elementary schools are 1,153. Our SACE intermediate school 553. Our middle school 831. And our high school is 1,113 with 32 out of district placements. And on the reverse side, you can kind of see the historical trends that we've been living here over the last couple years. On to the donation report. Shippensburg School District would like to acknowledge donations from a number of groups, and again, just thank our generous community. Would like to thank Lowe's for donations valuing $360 towards our garden club at the middle school. Ames Company, a $500 donation towards the mini-thon, which is coming up in April. Anyone that wants to chaperone, I know they're looking for it. It's always a good time. JKM Training Inc., $250 to support the Best Day Ever event, which is kind of like Shippensburg's homegrown Special Olympic event. It is truly well named. It is a great day. Volvo, $500 donation to support that. Best Day Ever. Carl L. Kramer Insurance, $250 donation to support Best Day Ever. And Chamberlain's Pest Control, a $50 donation to support Best Day Ever. So thanks to all those community members and businesses that supported the district this month.
Consent agenda, item 5A is the approval of minutes. 4B is finance, and all of those attachments are available. 4C, policies for second reading and approval. 4D is the grant approval for the consumer science. 4E, networking equipment purchase and upgrade. Item 4F, the waste management contract. Item 4G is all of the different personnel, professional and support, resignations, transfers, etc. Is there a motion to approve items 4A through G?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dr. Lyman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion?
Yeah, one thing, this time of year, this is about 4G, nothing in particular, well, it is in particular, but this time of year you start seeing like some retirements start to come in. So I just wanted to make sure that I said thank you to those two staff members, longtime staff members who are going to be retiring. There's tremendous accomplishments in their careers, in their teaching here. Everyone, I think we have the best staff ever. If you talk to building administrators, all the way down, administration down to building level, to teachers. So I just wanted to say thank you. And anytime people leave, it's incredibly hard to replace them. But best of luck to those two in their retirement.
I just would echo, and you beat me to it, Mr. Kressler. They definitely will be missed.
Can I just second that? On a very personal note, I have a kid who I think can read because of one of these retiring staff members. So very grateful for their service.
Any further discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Action agenda, item 5A is expulsion waivers. Parents did waive their rights to the discipline hearings. One will be placed into the Keola program, which is our district virtual platform for a minimum of 45 days, and the second will be placed at River Rock Academy. Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
So moved.
Motion made by Dr. Goetz. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Noggle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5B is the donation for K&W for the Homes Program Holiday Party. K&W donated 15 personalized gift baskets, each also containing a $200 gift card for the Shippensburg Area School District Homes Holiday Party. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Goetz. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? I just want to say thank you because they donated like $5,000 to the golf tournament last year. I think that they've been a great partner to work with, so I just want to say thank you to the folks over at KMW. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5C, the SAMS 8th grade law day field trip. SAMS is requesting to take approximately 20 8th graders from the PBIS team to a law day on May 20th at the historic courtroom in Chambersburg. Students attending law day will learn firsthand what it's like to be a member of a jury while watching mock trial put on by the members of their Franklin County Young Lawyers. Is there a motion to approve item 5C?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Goetz, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5D, the Shippensburg FFA banquet. Administration recommends approval of the Shippensburg FFA to hold a banquet on Thursday, May 2nd at the Heritage Restored. Will cost $250 and to be paid by the Shippensburg FFA. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Goetz, second by Mr. Noggle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5E is the head of custodian job description. Administration recommends approval of the attached job description pertaining to head of custodian position. This is a new position. Is there a motion to approve item 5E?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Goetz, second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5F is the PA principal's contract for interim assistant principal. The agreement is attached. Administration recommends approval of the agreement between PA Principals Association and the district for an interim assistant principal services needed for the high school for the duration of Mrs. Fritz's leave at a daily rate of $307 plus admin fees of 10% with a total cost of $337.70 per day. Is there a motion to approve item 5F?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Goetz, second.
Second.
By Mr. Noggle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5G is 2 new cashier helper positions with confirmation of receipt of grant money to expand the grab-and-go breakfast programs at the senior high school and middle school. Administration recommends approval to add 4-hour cashier helper positions at both the middle school and high school. Is there a motion to approve item 5G?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Lyman, second by Mr. Noggle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5H is the middle school chiller maintenance proposal. Administration will recommend approval of the proposal from Johnson Controls to change the variable frequency drive coolant in the 2 York chillers at the middle school. The total cost to change the coolant and to do a leak test will be $3,495 and will be paid from the maintenance supply and repair account. Is there a motion to approve item 5H?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Noggle, second by Dr. Goetz. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 5I is the Shippensburg Area Senior High School Expansion Due Diligence Contract. Administration recommends approval of the agreement with Frederick Siebert and Associates to complete due diligence work for potential expansion of the high school campus located in the borough of Shippensburg. The purpose of this work is to determine feasibility of the development of a parcel adjacent to the existing campus to identify and maximize the benefit to the school district. The total cost would be $9,000 and paid for from the future capital project fund balance. Is there a motion to approve item 5I?
It's going to make a motion to approve.
Fred Scott makes a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm actually opposed, so can we do a roll call, please?
Mr. Levi Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Darren Donovan,
Yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Kurt Noggle,
No.
Mrs. Steph Eberly.
no.
Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no.
Item 5J is the sinkhole repair quote for James Bird. Administration recommends approval of one of the following attached quotes to remove drain pipes and repair a sinkhole at James Bird Elementary School. Administration recommends going to Snokes Excavating due to how quickly they can get the project started. Is there a motion to approve item 5J?
Fred Scott make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5K, the escrow operations and maintenance and development agreements with the Borough of Shippensburg. Administration recommends approval of the below referenced documents with the Borough of Shippensburg as part of the new athletic stadium project at the Shippensburg Area Senior High School. These documents have been reviewed by both our legal counsel and the borough's legal counsel. These documents are necessary to satisfy the conditional approval and to record the land development plan. And those are the escrow agreement, the operations maintenance agreement, and development agreement. Is there a motion to approve item 5K?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Goetz. Is there a second?
Fred Scott second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
The discussion agenda, item 5A is the grant approval that was added to the agenda. Sue Fink, the Executive Director of the Greyhound Foundation, is seeking approval to apply for and accept a grant of $150,000 innovation grant from Accelerate, a large funding nonprofit working across the country to find solutions to close the learning gaps.
Steph, can I real quick comment on that? So, you know, Ms. Fink was here tonight. I 100% acknowledge that before I first talked to her, got to know her, listened to her back in November, again tonight, I was just like, oh, capital campaign, that's what everybody kind of thought with that position. But I think this is again, there's so many things, and she's incredibly valuable in this position with her and as well as the foundation, like I said earlier, to helping, fund some of the needs of our district. So again, thank you to Sue and everything that she's doing.
6B is the policies for first reading and discussion. I'm going to go through these. Stop me if you have questions. If not, reach out to administration. 6C is the Greyhound Foundation donation with the hotspots. 6D is the SAM 7th grade field trip to the Conachachig Institute in Mercersburg. 6E is the SAM's Yes MOU. F is the sports physical expenses.
Can I pause you? You can finish, but can I pause you?
So
at that?
the sports physical expenses is referring to waiving those $10 fees, which I believe was a $1,200 savings, or an expense that the district will.
So I am 100% in favor of this. I think this is a good move on the part of, I think it is a recommendation from the athletic committee. One of the things we talked about in the policies committee is also just getting rid of the activity fee. I think we need to reduce as many obstacles, especially financial obstacles, to students participating in sports or extracurriculars of any kind in this district. And I can't imagine that we're making, $1,200 is fiscal noise in as big a budget as we have. And I can't imagine we're making a lot of money off of the activity fees either. So I would love to see us get rid of as many fees as possible associated with our extracurriculars.
My understanding is we make about that brings in about $25,000 those activity fees. So it's a little bit more than $1,200. And it does support the athletic budget.
Mr. August, if I can, this is just me randomly thinking, but $1,200, not a ton. We also, when we do items like the auction, like Hurley auctions and stuff, or Christy, you can answer this, I don't know, we don't make a ton of money off that, but it's a little bit of money, a couple $1,000s. What happens to that money? I assume just goes back in a general fund. So is that something that we could look at that, because we recently had an auction, we could be like, hey, there's, I don't know, I don't know what that number was, $5,000. We say, hey, okay, of that 5,000 that went to the general fund, can we just, if the board, going forward follows this recommendation that says, hey, $1,200 of that, we could, like, that's where we could kind of, because it seems like we do auctions every year. I don't know if that's right, but it feels like every year, like a couple of years ago, we had desks sitting outside for the entire winter.
Sure.
But
I'd defer to Mrs. Lentz on
The
this.
auction money revenue that we get sits in like a miscellaneous revenue account. So when I budget, I will look at historical trends, and so I'm capturing that revenue in our miscellaneous revenue.
okay.
So I mean, that's one possible way to make it up. I don't. Our auctions don't. I can't speak intelligently on what.
I don't know the history. I
Right.
don't have the numbers with
So
me.
they vary greatly in,
Yeah.
in how much comes in, depends on
Like
what.
this
what
year's
out.
was better than past years, but I don't know.
I mean, even if it is $25,000, I am certain community members would help support something like getting rid of activity fees so everybody can play sports.
I think it's even simpler than that. I mean, I think it's just the board's will to do, direct me to do away with those and supplement the athletic budget or make cuts if required.
That's all I had.
All right, 6F is the Lincoln Intermediate Unit number 12, agreement for bilingual speech evaluation. 6H is the Capital Area Intermediate Unit General Operating Budget for the 24-25 school year. I is the E-rate funding bid for the internet and phone connectivity. 6J is the Newburgh Council Volunteer Crossing Guard. 6K is the K&W Scope and Work Agreement for the middle school and high school improvements.
Can somebody explain that to me? What is that?
Sure. So it's the additional work that goes into once we go through the design process and approval process with the borough. There's some tweaks there. So it requires some redrawing of stormwater. Like stormwater. Variances that we need to do based on the inclusion of sidewalks that are part of that approval process. So there were some things that K&W has to do coming out of the borough approval process. So there's some minor.
When you say minor, how much? How much is K&W charging us? You have an idea?
I'll have to find out specifically. Is it in the attachment, Mr.?
It should be. It is.
I think it might be in the attachment, Fred.
I tried to open it. I can't open it.
Like $23,000.
$23,000 for an architect firm is not a very long. I mean, it's a good amount of money, but it's required for them to do the design work, and that's just based on how we're coming out of our design approval process.
I understand what you're saying.
Any further discussion on that? 6L is the district notary. Administration recommends the re-implementation of an on-site district notary. 6M is the future maintenance building inclusion in the high school, middle school land development plan.
Good. If I could just fill in some blanks there, Fred, you had talked about the maintenance building.
Yes.
In talking with K&W, they recommended that we include that potential in the land development plan so that we don't have to come. So like we're already doing a land development plan with them, with the borough. If we include it now, we potentially save doing it as a standalone and incurring costs again that may be higher.
But we're going to pay them to do it.
So they're just including it in the plan that we already have.
So we don't have to pay them no more money.
So we do have to pay them to do a little bit of design work in order to get it into the plan. But ultimately, in my conversations with them, if we ever build this, we would have to go back through a different process and it would likely be more expensive. Doing it now is kind of, we get an economy of scale. We have 5 years for that plan. If we move to build that building, we have 5 years under if we include it in this plan. Afterwards, we would have to reapply.
Okay. When are we going to build the building?
I'm sorry, Fred.
When are we going to build the building? We've all been up there. We all come back and say it's not fit for our employees to be working in that building. And here we are talking about a 2 to 5 year plan. I've been 3.5 years asking for this.
So
Why-
our interim maintenance director has included that as part of the 5-year capital project lookout, and he has it in there for the 25-26
So another year.
year.
2 years. Sounds like 2 years, Fred.
So we're going to have our employees washing their hands out in the cold in a building that the only heat they got is a salamander, and the conditions are. We all come back and said we all saw it and saw it's unsafe. So we're going to push it down the road instead of taking care of our people. Is that what you're telling me?
It's not that it can't be
is
moved.
taking care of it.
How?
Pushing it down the road would not be doing this.
I'm saying I want it done now.
Well, you got to do this first.
What?
What
This piece has to be
this
done
piece
first,
then
Fred.
for approval.
All right, but
So this is a step towards doing that.
how far? I want to know how far is the step. I've been 3.5 years. I've been told different things. We can't do this, and you say it's in the Is it in this year's budget? Not.
It's to come out of the fund balance capital maintenance projects for 25-26. The board can choose to move it up sooner. But we have it budgeted in 25-26.
So it won't be built till when?
And we also don't have a cost for the building. So I think like to remember, it's a step process. Like this is step one. And then we would have to get an estimate or design, like what that building would look like to say, do we have the money? Can we afford it now? We don't know how much it costs. So to look at it as this is step one, is approving this to get into that land development. So step one is done. So that when we are ready, we just need to get an estimate of and a quote of what that's going to cost.
3.5 years. I said when we get ready.
And we're here. Like
How are we here?
3.5 years. Like this is step one.
Those men are
Daryl,
washing
you're
their
happy,
hands
right?
in cold water.
Daryl, I mean,
They got a porta john sitting in a building, a porta john. They're washing their hands on. If a labor and industry came in there, they shut it down. And we can't come up with money in our budget with $16 million to take care of our people.
Fred, I would just reiterate this is us doing that. If we want to move it up,
I would like to see it
then
moved up.
so the process would be to make a motion to do that. We can certainly look at it and move forward. So at this point, Fred, this is the first step. This is what I think you've been a pretty strong and vocal advocate for it. I think everybody on the board who's been to that building or administration knows that it can't, it needs to be addressed, and this is us starting to address it. So, when you say 3.5 years, we haven't done anything, well, that's ended tonight. If, next week we begin to move that process forward. Construction of any type is a slow moving train.
Not this slow. Not this slow.
I can't speak to the
I understand
previous 3.5 years, Fred.
I'm not holding you responsible for that. I'm just saying we got, how much is in the fund balance, Christy?
Like in total, in what bucket line item? Like, what are you asking for?
How much money we have accessible to us? How much money is accessible to the school district in the budget?
I'd have to go back and look. I think we're
No,
like
don't worry about
13
that.
million, 13 to 15 million.
If we spent $300,000 for a building for them, would that break us?
No, there's money in the future capital projects line item that could cover that.
So we can move it up and start doing now. Do what you want done with the
so we can have this discussion, more discussion whenever after we approve this. We need to get to step one, and then you can work the wording of a motion to move that process faster, if that's what your wishes are.
So
yes.
Okay.
we have a facilities meeting this week, Fred. We can maybe get something together and bring a motion forth from that.
All right.
Recommendation from the
Yeah, Fred, no one's arguing that we need to do something.
I know, and I
Just to
keep
be
hearing
clear.
we're going to. I'm just tired of we're going to. And I'm not blaming. Well, no, never mind. Let it go.
All right. Citizens' comments regarding non-agenda items. I don't see any. Does anyone wish to make any comments regarding any non-agenda items? All right. Seeing
I
none.
think we got one.
Maybe this time it'll be better. Fred, I appreciate the comments about the the speed at which things are done, and the project again. What I was trying to say earlier was, you buy a whole outfit for work, you're not going to go and just buy the pants, and then later on go back and buy the jacket or buy the shirt. Figure out how much the whole thing costs. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. Know what you need, know the entire scope of the project, and then when you have that price, then you know what you need. And even if the district commits the $5.6 million, then Sue and company knows how much they can raise to start moving these things along faster. But from what I understand, I think what was approved by the borough is what was asked of the borough. I don't think anything else was asked for and they were denied. I think they approved, and I kind of think they're just kind of wondering why they didn't get asked to approve the entire project and then take all the steps necessary to approve the entire project. So I'm kind of wondering that myself, but hopefully that came across there, so appreciate it again.
Thank you. Moving on to
You got another lady, you can let her.
Sorry, I meant to be here earlier, but my meeting in Carlisle went longer. I'm Barbara Dickey. I live in District A, and I meant to be here a lot earlier in the year, but Mondays have been tough. I wanted to kind of give you an update, and I congratulate those of you that were reelected or those of you that came on board. And as we look at 2025, I'm really looking at what we look like for electing board members for 2025, and I'm taking Lois Kanashiki's course. As we look at sunshine rules, we look at all kinds of things, but I'm excited. And I want you to know that I knocked on 150 to 200 doors in District B and had a chance to listen to that many people talk to me about what they want. And what was really, really interesting, that most of them were real concerned that our school district has gone woke. And they wanted assurance that that was not where we are. And so I had a chance to talk with a lot of people about as to what is actually happening here and encouraging people to do that. Also looking at curriculum. I'm an LCSW. I have a Master's of Education and Social Work, and I have a private practice in Chambersburg. And I'm seeing a lot of your kiddos. And COVID did a lot of damage, but we're doing what we needed to do. But just some suggestions. I didn't see a curriculum committee on the board thing, and looking if there is one to be part of that, but to look at solid learning. Part of what I'd like to see is diagnostic tests in the fall, so that when you take those PSEAs, that you're measuring John Smith to John Smith, not classroom teacher to classroom teacher, not grade level to anything else, because you can only measure apples to apples, not anything different. And I like to see us doing a better job of raising the scores of our students. I've taught everything from preschool to college. I did student teachers at Clarion. And I'd like to see Shippensburg to be the top of the list here in everything that we're trying to do. And I think that's what all of you want to see happening, but I'd like to be a part of that if, we can do more with curriculum. I know the needs of the buildings. I've watched the building go up over here at the middle school. I've listened to the newspaper article. I missed whatever went on about that newspaper article and that allegedly $10 million that was in there. That I missed and would like to know more about that. But I'm hearing the community very concerned about anything that looks like CRT, anything that looks like social and emotional learning, looks like anything that looks like DEI, and turning the schools into a socialistic place. That came out loud and clear as I passed out flyers, candy bars, and just talked with people in your community. So District B had a chance to really speak out as where they are. And whoever is running in 2025, I will knock on doors for anybody that's got a good message out there for our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickey. Board comments. Mr. Scott?
The bleachers down at the park.
I'm sorry, I can't.
The bleachers down at the park. Are they going to be inspected by the borough?
So I've been in conversations with them. Obviously it's their property, so we have to work with them. We're working towards that, Fred. We have that agreement. We may try to adjust it a little bit to get an inspection there.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's safe. So
okay.
yeah, we're in conversation. We've had a conversation about moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Other than that, I have nothing. I'm out. My jaw's hurt.
Mr. Kressler.
First, you mentioned Minithon earlier. Does anybody here know the date of Minithon?
I believe it's April 5th.
April 5th. Thank you. And that's Mrs. Yanish is
Correct.
awesome. Awesome. Cool event. If anyone's not familiar with like Thon, like Penn State Thon, that's like the main Thon, and now this is a mini thing. Awesome stuff that raises a whole lot of money for pediatric cancer. So, thanks for that. Mamma Mia and Outrageous were both great events from everything I heard. I was really upset I didn't get to go to Outrageous. I got sick last week. The whole thing. So I'm upset I missed that because again, it's just it's another night or multiple nights in the case of Mamma Mia that shows the talents of all of our kids in whatever their niche is. Like it's not just, this isn't a school district that says, hey, this is just an athlete or whatever else. I mean, we've seen some really cool things. We've had the young men who made us all pens back in January. That was awesome. You go to the Outrageous, you see this stuff. It's amazing what our kids can do. The Lego thing from 2 weeks ago, I'm still mind blown over that. And then I guess, well, let me say this. Spring sports started. Baseball is supposed to scrimmage today. They were supposed to scrimmage today. It ended up getting postponed, I think, till tomorrow because it was so windy out. But by the time we meet again, most of our sports teams will have already competed in their first meet or game. So best of luck to all those student athletes. And then the topic, and we talked about it, and I don't want to rehash this, but the topic of the maintenance barn, I think that's, as this comes forward for a vote in 2 weeks, it's a step in the right direction. And I'm a real firm believer that this board has, over the last year or so, has really started to do things that have been long overdue through the course of time. So I'm extremely proud of all of us as a group. The middle school addition, wonderful. We have an approval for the athletic stadium out here, wonderful. We have an approval for high school and middle school renovations, a little bit more than middle school. That's, again, awesome and wonderful. Things that are 15 to 20 years in the making. And the maintenance barn, I think, is going to be a part of that as well. Again, identifying a need. These aren't easy decisions. These are things that have got pushed down the road for a long, long time, that I'm happy to say that we are making moves on correcting these things. So other than that, the final thing is, Steph, thank you for your comment earlier at the beginning of the meeting. I think that was well written and hopefully well received. Thanks.
Dr. Goetz.
Yeah, it seems like every time I talk about the musical, and I'm going to talk about it again, Mamma Mia was awesome. But here's the thing that I think is so great about our musical programs at Shippensburg. And I honestly am saying this with so much love, right? Because it's one thing to see someone who's really talented do a thing. If I see a really talented athlete perform as an athlete, that's really cool. But frankly, what is far more rewarding is to see a group of athletes that maybe aren't so particularly talented, but have worked really, really hard to, sort of perform well as a team in whatever thing that they're doing. And that's what I see in the Shippensburg musicals, both at middle school and the high school. There is talent, no doubt, but there's a whole bunch of people who I don't know, they're just sort of normal kids or whatever, and they were brave enough to do it, to raise their hand and say they were going to do it, and together they put together this tremendous performance. And I mean, that just to me speaks to the kinds of engagement that we want in our district, that we want in our students, to be able to provide people the opportunity to do cool things that aren't necessarily part of their identity, but allow them opportunities to stretch and do interesting things. And when I was sitting in that auditorium, I was very excited. Somebody mentioned this earlier about the flagship Proud program. I was just sitting there reflecting on the decision that a board made, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, to invest $450,000 into an upgrade of the of that facility, and what a marvelous like experience it is to be in that auditorium and see those kids use it well. So that's it, and thank you for everyone who's involved in that program to make it happen.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Akers. We're going to be hosting our third career day at the high school. I know she's putting a lot of work into this, and along with Susan Fink, they set a goal to get 50 speakers to come and talk to the kids about different types of careers and jobs that these kids could get into. And they are still looking for, I think last I checked, around 15 to 20 individuals to show up and talk about their business, their career, even potential for hiring opportunities. So if anybody knows anybody, like, spread the word and try to help get this going and be a successful event for our students. And then I guess secondly, the athletic stadium deal. To Mr. Alosi's point, I agree with what he's saying. I mean, if we're going to do this, why are we not getting the full design so we at least know everything that we're getting, a price? It eliminates any confusion moving forward involving the borough. Because at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong, the borough holds the keys to whether or not we have football on campus.
So we did receive a full design with estimated numbers. I think it was when we first came on the board, we had numbers based if it was on campus and if it was at Memorial Park. So we also, when Damien was here, he created a software that we could actually plug in the different amenities to see what that cost was. So while we didn't, maybe it wasn't submitted to the borough, like, we do know approximately what it would cost. Like, there's a line item. It's like literally, I think it's like a la carte. So we do know what it's going to cost. So to pay or EI to design it, tens of thousands of dollars, when we know around about that lights are between $800,000 and $1 million. So I think that while we don't have like concrete, we do know. And we were provided that information, but that was before you.
Right, but we have plans to complete this with as soon as possible, correct? Like, we get this first step done. I don't want a 5 to 10 year, 15-year lag of no football. So I'm just having confusion why we're not doing the full design, because I mean, if we're all in, we're all in.
Isn't it because we don't know that we have the money yet?
Yeah, I mean, if that's directed to me, Mr. Donovan, I would say, a lot of schools take phase projects to get things done. They don't do the next phase design until they're absolutely ready and they know they can build what they want to build. I would submit that if we accept the bids as they come in, we will have accomplished something that hasn't been done in 20 years. So I don't think it's an either or binary decision. The phase project fits our budget and fits basically where we are as a district. I came from a place that had a dirt cinder track for 25 years until they could afford to build a better track. And we're in a similar boat, that the full design is not necessary, and because we can't afford it, first of all, and we would be spending, to Mrs. Eberly's point, a lot of money in design fees to get it there, which we would never potentially build, or we would maybe want to alter anyway. So this is the most conservative way to do this project, at least in my opinion, is to get something done so that we have a commitment from the district that will allow us to reach out to different organizations and businesses to say, do you want to partner with us to finish it? So step-by-step project for something like this, particularly in our situation where, you've talked about elementary enrollments and the importance down there. We have some facility needs down there. And so, as conservative as we can be in the design process, that frees up resources for us to attend to other priorities.
And then, so we get this first step done and we go to put lights in, then we have to get the traffic study done, correct?
It is, the borough put a contingent that in order to move forward to play varsity football, the borough is going to require a traffic study, which to my mind is not necessarily unreasonable as they try to assess the parking needs.
And what if we find out that we cannot meet the requirements for parking?
I don't see why we wouldn't, because we already kind of meet by building this, we have met the requirements. We have the 5-to-1 ratio that they require. In fact, this project improves the number of parking spots at the high school by like 20, I believe. So we've met the parking requirements. The traffic study will indicate how many, it depends on how it comes back, whether we need to add more. But that's their requirement, that they put on us, is to do this traffic study.
And then I don't know, I just have a hard time. So basically, in essence, we are gambling with taxpayer money because we do not have 100% guarantee that football can be here.
I don't think we're gambling at all. I think,
Accurate, Bill.
I think that's certainly an opinion in my mind. We have taken a prudent step to move the process forward. And it's the will of the board. Please understand, it's 5 votes by the members of this board that makes that decision. The directive I was given was a vote in April that we were going to build an athletic stadium at our school, and that's what I've tried to navigate us to get to. If the will of the board changes, it changes. But currently, if someone wants a full design, certainly putting a more motion forward, we can look at doing that. Okay, like it's not like I'm gatekeeping that. I don't want to give that impression. If that's the will of the majority of the board, we can do that. We can complete that. We can start that process now. I just think we're going to have to really look at the fees that we incur to do that ahead of when we're ready on the financial side to get it done. Those two things have to go, to my mind, hand in hand. We would be designing something that we would not immediately be using because we don't have the funds.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the athletic stadium. Just to be clear, I'm not on like either team or whatever, but I just don't want to. If the borough at the end of the day doesn't allow us, I don't want to be sitting with an athletic stadium with field goal posts that we can't utilize for football, and then that puts us in a predicament where we don't have a long-term place for our junior varsity and varsity football players. And that's my biggest holdup with this. If I get some kind of long-term plan for those guys to be taken care of and some assurance from the borough before we put money into that aspect of the design, I mean, I have no qualms about it.
I would just remind that we've already spent $380,000 just to get what we did here in design fees. So we would be looking at, I would think a comparable amount, maybe less, maybe more, to continue that process.
Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong. No matter what happens, we're only going to spend $5,600,000, correct?
$5.6 million is getting us what?
Basics. That's taxpayer. That's what we're using for taxpayer money.
Phase 1.
Phase 1. So anything after that is donations. So we build the concession stand, we build the bathrooms, field house. That's not coming out of taxpayer. Already made that. That was
I think it's also important when we hired Sue Fink. It's going to take some time to get some money into that pipeline. It's going to take. It's actually 2 to 3 years is kind of like the norm to get like large amounts of money in the pipeline to fund big projects like that.
And Mr. Donovan, I would say if it is the will of the board to to vote to do lights and continue that process before we've even begun this project, that is how boards work. It's not, it is what gets 5 votes to move forward with the process.
But to me, that's designing something that we don't even know we have the money for. And that sounds like more of a gamble than the process we're doing. And as Fred said, there are no taxpayer dollars involved with these extras that we were going to put at the stadium. So to characterize it as a gambling with taxpayers' dollars sounds pretty inaccurate to me.
I mean, we're building this to house football at some point, correct?
That was the
borough doesn't stop us.
I also think I don't get the sense that the borough is some evil entity that is trying to stop us from playing football on campus here. I think to say things like that doesn't help with just the general feeling in the community that we're all trying to work on this together.
To your point, Dr. Lyman, the borough has granted every variance that we've asked for to date.
Yeah, and so I think this kind of assumption or language that the borough is somehow our enemy is definitely not productive.
And I think it's also important to remember that tonight you all also approved for a property adjacent to the district to be looked at for possible stormwater. We wouldn't be doing that if the intention was not to play varsity football here at some time. I mean, I voted no because, quite frankly, we don't have the money to play varsity football. Why do I want to spend $9,000 to assess a property? I mean, the goal is eventually varsity football.
So much of this conversation is revolving around varsity football, but let's not forget that the facility that we are going to build is going to be awesome for track, for field hockey, and for soccer, and for PE, and for assemblies.
Yeah, and the band.
And band, I mean, it's like lots of things, right? So even if in some strange world, like we don't get to the point, which I don't see any reason why we shouldn't get to the point that we can't play varsity football, we are getting something that the district needs and has needed for a very long time, very badly.
That our current track kids can't even compete there.
Well, in our field,
I'm not arguing against the athletic facility. I'm just looking at the long-term aspects of it. I just want to make sure we get it right. So,
yeah. Dr. Lyman.
Wow. I'm glad there was a break there because I'm going to also talk about Mamma Mia. It was great. I know I'm biased, but congrats to those kids who did that and to all the adults that helped. Middle school play is coming up this week, I believe. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe. So go see Madagascar, see some lemurs. And then I'll just second kind of what Levi said. I'm excited for spring sports and really grateful to all of our coaches and for the sacrifices and the time they put into helping our kids. We really need to appreciate our coaches now because I know they're kind of hard to come by right now, and we need good people. So I'm super grateful for the people we have.
Darren, I just want to thank you for the recommendation of taking the maintenance barn to the facilities committee. I mean, I really like seeing our committees being used for what they were intended for. Outrageous was a packed house, and it was amazing. I got to spend some time in Mr. Martin's room as well. Just the cameras, the 3D, the slow motion graphics that they do. Like, it's amazing to see the technology and innovation and all the STEM stuff coming to fruition. Leslie, thank you so much for all of your hard work in the grants. I remember when we hired you, like you had a little bit of experience, but not a whole lot to see you settle in, and all that hard work to go into that. Thank you so much. And I just want to kind of close with my comment to say that I think it's really important that we look at our progress through a lens of optimism of things that we have accomplished. I am proud of us. We've been at this, I know board members have been at it longer than I have and Levi have, but to to celebrate our wins. Like, we can be proactive looking at the future, but we've had some big wins, and we're still doing great things. So just to be proud of the work that we have done and we are currently in the process of doing. And that's it. So information, date savers, March 14th, the facilities.
Did Mr. Noggle get to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No comment.
Sorry. March 14th, facilities. March 21st, the safety and security meeting. And March 25th, we'll be meeting again, the committee of the whole and our regular planning and action meeting. Meeting is adjourned.